There are quite a number of workers who are still not really earning the amount of money that we want them to earn. So workers want a living wage, and the minimum wage is a way of going towards a living wage. Women are still paid far less than men in our country, so today is a day to champion.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa defends the proposed minimum wage ahead of his maiden International Workers' Day speech.
We believe that there needs to be some introspection amongst people in the governance of the Northwest.
The Deputy Secretary General of the ANC breaks her silence on the issue of the Northwest protests. Operations have resumed at the N3 toll plaza near Moy River in KwaZulu-Natal.
And later in sport, Bayern Munich head coach Jupp Heynckes has called upon referee Cüneyt Çakır of Turkey to be fair and just in the face of pressure from Real Madrid and the Bernabeu crowd as the two face off in the second leg of the UEFA Champions League semi-final tonight.
Very good morning to you and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Shante Yankees. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Coming up this hour, we give you live updates across the country on Workers' Day commemorations as well as APE. The President Cyril Ramaphosa will be delivering the maiden address this morning. Valen Kirtley is standing by with your sports this Workers' Day. Very good morning to you, Valen. You well?
I'm very well, thank you, Shante. Good to be with you. Good morning to you and good morning to our viewers. I look forward to bringing you sports here on Newsroom. But first, let's return to the news desk for your top story with Shante.
The lead story at 9 o'clock, President Cyril Ramaphosa says the proposed national minimum wage is a way towards achieving a living wage. Well, last week, workers from various unions marched across the country against the 20 rand an hour minimum wage and amendments to the labour laws. Ramaphosa was speaking during his 5-kilometre walk with the community of New Brighton in Port Elizabeth. The walk is ahead of today's May Day celebrations in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro.
Well, this is truly our nation-building moment because May Day happens, Workers' Day happens in the wake of our Freedom Day. So these are great moments in our country where our people get together. We've just come out of Human Rights Day, now we were in Freedom Day, and now we are in Workers' Day. And these are moments that we should all utilize as South Africans to build cohesion, to build our nation further, but also to reflect on many things that bind us together as a nation, as a people, but also reflect on things of the moment, because workers' rights are important. There are quite a number of workers who are still not really earning the amount of money that we want them to earn. So workers want a living wage, and the minimum wage is a way of going towards a living wage. Women are still paid far less than men in our country, so today is a day to champion also the rights of workers, particularly the vulnerable workers, workers in the farms, workers who are very lowly paid, who work in dangerous places. So these walks are also moments to reflect on that, but it is also a moment for me to meet our people. This is a most wonderful way to walk with them, to talk to them, and as I walk, and some people look down on these walks, as I walk, one listens to what the people say. They come and walk beside me, they tell me their issues. Of course, they take selfies, which is wonderful, and that in itself is a wonderful way of interacting with ordinary people so that our interface with them can be based on their lived experience.
Meanwhile, Cosatu President Dlamini says the national minimum wage must be implemented no later than August 2018.
We are building a workers' federation, and you continue to do that without tiring. Every time, every year, every Congress, we do an evaluation on what were the strengths, what were the gains in the previous period. And we continue to do that. During this time, from our last Congress to the next Congress, as you have said, building Cosatu unity and cohesion in advancing the national democratic revolution is very relevant, because that's the prime time for an agenda for the achievement of a national democratic revolution, which is going on and on. Today, the economy is such that the working class feels the pinch so much, and they've been doing so over the past recent decades. And if we don't fix it this time, it will take us much longer. We are indeed building stronger Cosatu and stronger Cosatu unions, but for the working class to be united and speaking in one voice in this country against the ills, talk the VAT that has been increased now, the IPPs that government have just signed, the labor brokers that are still a menace, the e-tolls in Gauteng, and the demand, the quest for land for the people of this country is where workers matter.
Let's just quickly speak about some of the gains. I remember one press briefing, at least, where Cosatu was voicing its concerns, where we would have had this implementation around the amendments of the pension funds of workers. And Cosatu said, not in our name. This will not happen. And that was, again, I guess, for this federation.
Indeed, it goes around and comes around. When Minister Nhlanhla was Minister of Finance, we said stop this, and government under Jacob Zuma listened and stopped the implementation of what workers didn't like. And we gave each other 2 years to fix that. They have not fixed it. I'm sure Nhlanhla's coming back is clear that he must fix that. It has not been fixed. Workers' pensions are not for sale. They are not for anybody to play around. They are workers' savings, deferred wages of the workers. So we achieved that. We are still busy with that. This year around, we are realizing for the first time in 2018, after a period of over 50 years, a demand for a legislated national minimum wage in this country is going to happen. A floor below which no other employer must pay any worker in this country. It's an achievement, and it has got to be realized and recognized as that. Improve on it, build on it.
Yeah, and the thing about the national minimum wage is actually today was supposed to have been the day that the national minimum wage is implemented, but that date has now been pushed back, and there's no date now set.
I hear that there are fellows who are lying, telling our people that it has been deferred because of them raising the issue. No ways. We are having some smaller issues that must be ironed out. The Minister of Labour has announced that very clearly, and we have agreed that, fine, let us delay it, but it must be implemented not later than August this year. It has got to kick in, and the workers that are standing to benefit from it are waiting.
Let's quickly speak about the politics of the unions and the federations of all. Quite a bold statement for Cosatu to be having its event here, of course, knowing very well that this is a strong constituency of your former union and former alliance partner within the federation, NUMSA, which is also having some event that will be taking place, not the main Workers' Day rally that will be taking place. What message exactly is it that Cosatu is sending inadvertently to Safta as well as NUMSA?
Well, we are saying the unity of workers in this country is important. It is very, very important for us to turn these towns, which are becoming ghost towns under the DA in Nelson Mandela Bay here. We need workers united. So whether workers from NUMSA, Cosatu, today is our day. We are here to say our plight is very, very critical. The world must know. South Africa must know that. We are not in any form competing with Safta or NUMSA here. Actually, we will meet each other in the streets, greet each other and say well done and well wishes on your own. We are here at the Isaac Wolfson's Stadium as Cosatu, celebrating but also raising the plight of the workers.
Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa will deliver his first May Day speech as president of the ANC and head of the state later today. The main event is at the Isaac Wilson Stadium at KwaZakele in Port Elizabeth in the Eastern Cape. Cosatu will also hold 14 different rallies across the country.
The 2018 May Day is the first building block towards the 2019 general elections. The main rally will be held at the Isaac Wilson Stadium, which can accommodate 20,000 people. Cosatu is calling on its members to unite and join forces. It believes it will be smooth sailing compared to last year's debacle in Bloemfontein. The rally was cancelled as protesters prevented former President Jacob Zuma from speaking.
The leadership of the alliance will be addressing all the workers with no disturbance, actually throughout the country. We have indeed sent a clear message because that spot of last year, Cosatu, having had a discussion after, took a clear and a conscious decision to say there should be no booing.
Safta and NUMSA are expected to conduct their own march at Lillian Ngoyi Hall. Cosatu has urged its members to steer clear of other rallies.
In order to be this kind of a peaceful alliance, we are negotiating to take another route from KwaZakele police station to the stadium.
Cosatu says the national minimum wage is an achievement worth celebrating as it will lift many out of poverty. Gauteng Provincial Secretary Dumisani Dakile says the delay in parliamentary processes, which has led to the postponement of the date of implementation, is impacting negatively on workers. He says from the 1st of May, Cosatu will begin to engage on fighting for a living wage. Cosatu says it expects the long weekend and the ongoing bus drivers' strike to affect the turnout at their rallies. It's called on the Ministers of Transport and Labour to intervene to resolve the bus drivers' strike, saying the working conditions in the sector are unacceptable. SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, the main May Day celebrations will be held in Port Elizabeth. For the latest, we are joined by SABC's Aldrin Samper from the Isaac Wilson Stadium at KwaZakele in Port Elizabeth in the Eastern Cape. A very good morning to you, Aldrin. Give us the latest update on May Day celebrations in Port Elizabeth this morning.
Well, good morning. The official event here at the Isaac Wilson Stadium in Port Elizabeth starting in the next 2 hours or so, where we expect that address by Cyril Ramaphosa, and as you've indicated that it will be his first address as the president of the ANC as well as the president of the country, where he addresses a May Day rally. And it will be quite important to listen to exactly what he has to say, considering his history, considering that this is a man who was behind the formation of the National Union of Mine Workers. Remember that this used to be the biggest union in the country up until the point where NUMSA, which is a former Cosatu affiliate, became the biggest union in the country, and NUMSA at this moment remaining the biggest union in the country. But now, of course, they have joined Safta after the expulsion of NUMSA from Cosatu and the expulsion of Zimbabwean, who was the general secretary of Cosatu. And speaking earlier to Jesse Duarte, the deputy secretary general of the ANC, she says that the report actually that was compiled by Cyril Ramaphosa as well as the ANC team that was set up at the time. Remember back in 2012, ANC team was set up being led by Cyril Ramaphosa, was then just the deputy president of the ANC. That team compiled a report, and they indicated that NUMSA should not be expelled and Zwelinzima should not be expelled. And she says, as you can see, that history has vindicated themselves, and that's vindicated itself, and that's the reason why you see Safta being able to mobilize so hard and bring out thousands of workers who have abandoned their posts and marched. Last week Wednesday, as we saw them marching against the national minimum wage as well as the introduction of the 1% increase in terms of the VAT. But let me just quickly bring in Unathi Bungose, who will be with us throughout the morning as we cover this official event of the May Day rally. Unathi, quite interesting that Cosatu has chosen this particular venue, and of course this being Port Elizabeth. Back in 2016, the ANC launched its manifesto campaign here, and they suffered a blow because this municipality was then lost to a DA-led coalition.
Indeed, it is the friendly city as they know it. A friendly city that has been anything but friendly to events that have to do with the ruling party, the ANC. And of course, we know that Cosatu is a strong ally of the ANC. But we expect that it's one that President Cyril Ramaphosa will be looking forward to, given the crucial role that Cosatu played in his ascendancy to presidency of the ANC some 4 months ago, and of course subsequently to presidency of the country. And we do expect that at least we'll have a better picture than we saw the last time we were here and the last time the ANC and its allies were here for an event. And of course, you've got to be worried though, given the bus strike that is currently underway. I mean, these are the buses that normally ferry people from townships all around the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro and bring them to events of this nature. With this bus strike continuing, will they be able to fill this 10,000 seater stadium? We'll have to wait and see on that. But we do expect that perhaps the numbers will be slightly better than we have seen in the past. And also given the fact that this stadium is right in the heart of the townships of Port Elizabeth. It is right in KwaZakele. So a lot of people would not necessarily need transport to get here. They can always walk in here. As people can possibly see in the stands, people are beginning to walk in here. And of course, we do expect that by around about 11 o'clock, just before the main program starts, we'll have quite a number of people who will be here. And of course, speaking to the guy that you spoke to a little earlier on, the gentleman from SACP, he has made it clear that indeed the bus strike may cripple them a little bit, but he also highlighted that they have organized more than enough taxis to ensure that all those who are interested to be part of this event are able to.
The bus strike, of course, being a stickler of an issue. This is an issue that has been continuing over the past 2 weeks now, and considering that you had the Safta march that took place just a week ago, where thousands gathered outside, it would be quite important though for Cosatu to ensure that at least that they fill up this stadium to quote unquote not embarrass the president being the ANC president, as seen during the 2016 election manifesto launch, where the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium was somehow, there were some patches mostly across the grandstand which were empty, and quite an embarrassment for the ANC, which then had to come out and say that the organizers did not plan well and the bus drivers were not paid in time.
Indeed, Aldrin, and what we are seeing here at the moment is that we have not seen, in fact I have not seen, and I'm sure you haven't, seen any of the union's flags that have been flying around here. And the majority of the people who are seeing here seem to be community members, and the majority of them are in ANC colors. We are yet to see union members that are affiliated to Cosatu, and they always make their presence felt, and they always arrive with much fanfare. I mean, they'll be coming in, singing and dancing, and we are yet to see any of that. Maybe they are still mobilizing somewhere, and we do understand that our colleague Jade Lee Paulse is out and about, and of course there is a march that is scheduled to come to this venue. Maybe it's then that we'll start seeing some real workers coming to celebrate and mark this historic day in the history of South Africa.
I wonder though if they'll be able though to change that perception, considering that this is of course a May Day rally, and Cosatu being the biggest federation in the country, having I think it's about 18 affiliates if I'm not mistaken, but none of their banners are up at the stadium at this point. And earlier on we were speaking to one of the analysts, and we were speaking about how this federation itself is seemingly divided.
Indeed it is, and no more so than here in Port Elizabeth. I mean, like you said, NUMSA is by far the biggest union in South Africa, and its stronghold is right here in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, not far away from where we are, down in Dinaga, where the Volkswagen plant is. It is a union, it is a company that employs a lot of people from in and around here, people who normally fill stands every time Cosatu comes to town. And unfortunately, they do not have access to those people anymore, as NUMSA has joined ranks with the Vavi-led Trade Federation. But we do expect that, it will be naive for anyone to look at this outside of the 2019 general elections. And I'm sure Cosatu would want to make a statement, and there will be no better way of making that statement statement than to fill up this 10,000-seater stadium. And of course, this event comes exactly 20 years after Nelson Mandela delivered his last address to Cosatu as the President of South Africa. And of course, possibly that sentiment, and this being the centenary year of Nelson Mandela, maybe that sentiment may ring through to the people, and we'll see them coming out in their numbers to ensure that they save the day for Cosatu, and of course, they save the day for the ANC, which is at the head of the tripartite alliance.
Nactu, just quickly before we go to Jade, who's of course, as you've indicated, with those people who are marching, making their way here to the stadium. Here's something quite interesting, is that Safta has their official program which is happening in Bloemfontein, and according to the press release that was sent out, we expected the General Secretary of Safta, Zimbabwean, to be addressing that particular rally which is taking place in Bloemfontein. However, late last night, we actually found out that Zimbabwean will be in this town where Safta will also be having another rally. It's not the official main rally for Safta on its part, but the General Secretary of Safta decided to come here. I wonder what we can read into that, if anything at all.
It is very interesting, Aldrin, and I was quite surprised when I learned of that. I mean, looking at the Safta National Program up in Bloemfontein, you saw Vavi's name appearing in that list. He was expected to be one of the speakers. It's quite interesting to hear that he's down here in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro and holding a rally not far away from where we are standing. I mean, it's just a walk away at the venue where they will be having a rally of their own. So this is going to make things very, very interesting here. And I can tell you that NUMSA members who are right here in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, those who did not make it to Bloemfontein, will be there in their numbers to make a bold statement and send a strong message to Cosatu that Safta is here and it is alive and it is growing, particularly here in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro. So it is going to be a major challenge to Cosatu to try and counter that. And I'm sure it was deliberate, the fact that they've brought it so close to this event to ensure that even community members are having a hard time to choose between these two events.
And as we heard yesterday from one of the provincial leaders of Cosatu, saying that they had to change the route in terms of the march because they wanted to make sure that they don't antagonize the Safta members or the NUMSA members, but they've decided that they're going to take another route heading here to the stadium. And of course, Jade is with them at the moment. Jade, just tell us what the atmosphere is like.
Thank you, Aldrin. While you guys are waiting for the march to proceed to Isaac Wolfson Stadium, I have been following and, waiting for those people who marched with President Cyril Ramaphosa this morning at Langoza JB Hall. If my cameraman Benito can just show you, it's a relatively small crowd that has started formating here at Njoli Square. But I suppose as the hour goes on and as the time proceeds to where we do move up to Isaac Wolfson Stadium, this will probably increase by the numbers. I'm also told that those people who marched with the president this morning, they are also making their way up here. Like you indicated, we do have a nationwide bus strike, so commuting these people has been a bit of an issue, but nonetheless this has not deterred them. They are adamant that they will be walking from here all the way to KwaZulu Police Station to hand over that memorandum of grievances, and then they will make their way to Isaac Wolfson Stadium for the nationwide Cosatu rally and May Day. But like I said, as I told you, Cyril Ramaphosa marched with some of these members here this morning, and it was really touching to see him engage with the community here of Port Elizabeth. You would know that this is the first time that he's here since his inauguration, so it was really special for him to also speak to the community, find out what are some of the issues that they really have on the ground, and try and deal with that. So one thing that really came out for me was the fact that he said that he would be coming back to Port Elizabeth to plow back into the city. You do know that the president has also said that this metro needs to be regained by the ANC, and as Jesse Duarte mentioned in that press briefing and presser this week, they are going to fight for the city tooth and nail to ensure that the ANC captures this. And I think that one of the stepping grounds for the 2019 elections is is this May Day rally ensuring that everything goes well and that we don't see a situation that happened in Bloemfontein where the speakers were not able to speak, where former President Jacob Zuma wasn't able to give his keynote address. But the Cosatu members here on the ground are saying that they know that people will come out in their numbers, they will support the May Day rally, and Cyril Ramaphosa will give his keynote address. It's back to you in studio.
All right, thank you very much for that. That was SABC's Jade Lee Paulso from a march in KwaZulu in the Eastern Cape. Let's cross now to Mpumalanga. She's also been giving us the updates there as the South African Federation of Trade Unions is also set to celebrate International Workers' Day by holding May Day rallies across the country. Their main rally, however, will be kicking off in Bloemfontein today at the Madiba Arena at the University of the Free State, just around 10 a.m. this morning. SABC's Mpumalanga Mdlalane is on standby to give us the update. Very good morning to you. What's the update to your side ahead of the May Day rally in what has been called the City of Roses this morning?
A very good morning to you, Shante, and also to the viewers at home. All I can say is that people here are already making their way to Vista Arena. You can also say it's Madiba Arena here in Bloemfontein. Earlier on, we also spoke to Safta chairperson. She just also told us that the keynote addresses will be delivered by the Safta president, which is Meka Chabalala. And also she did mention that on top of the agenda, there will be discussions about the proposed minimum wage. We know that last week they took it to the streets to say that they are against the proposed minimum wage per hour for workers, which is 20 rands. But for now, all I can say is that, Shante, people, yes, are still coming in, and the Safta rally here is the national rally, and also it's expected to begin at 10 o'clock. And also what we've heard is that they're also celebrating their 1 year birthday, 1 year of existence. But for now, all I can say is that we will be coming through to you as the time goes by. But for now, it's still empty. People are just outside. But at 10 o'clock, we will be expecting at least a movement, especially inside here. But for now, let me hand over to my colleague, Vet Boy.
Well, good morning to you, Mpumalanga. Yes, we are coming to you live here from Kimberley in the Northern Cape, and we know that Cosatu members, they are also going to march from Khalishiwe up until the Ernest Memorial Park, where they will be handing over a memorandum to the Department of Minerals and Resources. But without any further ado, I'm joined now by Louise Thiepe. She's from Sakau, and she is the president. Good morning to you, Mrs. Thiepe.
Morning.
Just tell us quickly, what can we expect today here in Kimberley?
We're expecting members to come in numbers and receive the message from their beloved federation. All about the challenges and issues that face them as workers. We're expecting members to honor this very May Day as their day and as the day that they have fought for so many years, which is celebrated internationally so.
And we can just speak into those challenges that workers are facing.
The challenges now are, they vary from sector to sector, but the main challenge that we are faced with now is of casualization, and we faced of issues that workers for now are not really being employed in the very permanent employment that guarantees them a living situation, and we as I've indicated, that from sector to sector it's just challenges that differs.
And then also about the memorandum that you are going to be handing over to the Department of Minerals and Resources. If you can just speak into that.
The memorandum will be handed over. We will be having messages of support before and the reading of the memorandum. It talks more into the challenges of mining.
Thank you very much. Well, that was SACAO President Louise Tipe, and speaking to us what is basically going to be happening here, that they are going to be handing over a memorandum to the Department of Minerals and Resources. And we also know that the illegal miners and artisanal miners, they have received yesterday permits to mine now illegally. So with that, it is back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Reginald Overpoy, giving us updates there from Kimberley in the Northern Cape this morning on May Day and worker celebrations at that end. Well, today we are joined in studio by political analyst Kaya Sitole to give us analysis on the issues affecting South African workers, while also noting progress that has actually been made in certain areas. Very good morning to you, Mr. Sitole. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Essentially, if we just look at the past 2 or 3 weeks, the process that we've seen, as well as the stayaways, the strikes that is currently entering now its third, fourth week, let's just discuss the significance of South African Workers' Day and what it means to workers.
I think in the context of South Africa, you always have to remember that, especially during apartheid era, we always wanted nodes of protest where masses could sort of be gathered and sort of push for issues that were, affecting us socially. And of course, the South African labor relations in the past have not always been normal relations, because you had very oppressive regimes that were obviously trying to get people to do particular things, try to sort of get workers to behave in a particular manner. So you saw the rise of unions in the history of South Africa sort of being part of the workers pushing back to say, well, actually, we also have rights as people that are part of the economic ecosystem. So I think that in the South African context, it always reminds people that before, we used to be able to mobilize and unify on the basis that there was a common goal, which was that the plight of workers need to be improved in the country. So I think it takes its history from there. But also you have to acknowledge that even in the current system, there are always going to be tensions between labor and capitalism, because some are trying to extract the maximum value out of the workers, and the workers themselves are trying to get the best wage that they can get out of the system. So those tensions are always going to exist historically. And I think also what you see in the South African context is that what we're really trying to see now is that, are the workers' relations improving in the democratic state? And of course, the fact that we still don't have a living minimum wage that has been implemented sort of shows you that there is a relevance, there is a need for workers to occasionally gather forces together and say, actually, we are pursuing something that is common to all of us. So I think May Day always serves as the epicenter of the workers, sort of reminding us that they're part of the system and they're part of this economic architecture that we all need to be working towards. So you've seen over the past couple of weeks, obviously, there have been all these strikes. The bus strike is still carrying on because clearly the workers are still not satisfied with whatever it is that has been put on the table for them. And it's not just within the bus sector only. It's also a more universal question of, are workers' rights being advanced under this democracy? And in some cases, people don't think so. Obviously, in some cases, there have been significant progress. You've got a very different legislative regime that does protect workers, which didn't exist in the past. But of course, it's now a question of, now that we have the legal framework to say these are the workers' rights, they need to be safeguarded, are we doing it practically? And of course, the question of wages is central to that question, that are we actually getting what it is that we deserve when we're working for whatever sector that we're in? So I think that May Day is obviously the type of day that we should always embrace and celebrate every year, and take it as an opportunity to reflect and say, are the situation of the workers better than they were in the previous year or in the previous years, as it were? So if you remember last year, of course, it was a very difficult May Day politically, because you remember what happened to former President Jacob Zuma. So I suppose this year it comes at a time where there is a mending of the relations between the alliance partners, and of course the workers themselves are also feeling that they've got some political clout. They can push for things that are important to them, that are unique to them. So I think that today's speech will particularly be important for Cyril Ramaphosa to strike the right balance in sort of reminding the workers that we still do want to work with you, we still want to acknowledge you as part of the broader alliance. How can we work together and move the country forward?
Apart from the wage issue, and of course President Cyril Ramaphosa has defended the national minimum wage, what are some of the other very, very important issues that are affecting workers that perhaps could be overseen or overlooked at the moment?
I think you will remember our Cosatu President Zimbabwean alluded to the question of workers' pensions, because we remember a couple of years ago there was this idea that we were going to implement something called amortization, which simply means that when you retire you will no longer be allowed to take out a lump sum provided that your pension is at a particular level. And of course politically they didn't go down well with the workers themselves, and I've always suspected it was really a crisis of communication, because most people felt that the government was sort of wanted to garnish their pensions and dictate to them how they should spend their money. But of course the situation was not that simple. It was simply a question of the state coming back and saying, actually we have a very bad culture of savings as a country, and perhaps if we made it illegal for people to withdraw massive lump sums when they go on retirement, then of course we could inculcate a new culture of people saying that we'll keep our money in the system. And keep in mind that once people are retired, they essentially become, they have to depend on the state in one way or another. So of course the government had good intentions back then, but the way it was communicated, it was very badly articulated. And of course the unions fought back and said we actually don't want this to be implemented. So there was that moratorium, which was a 2-year delay in the implementation of those new pension fund rules. They're supposed to have come into operation on the 1st of March 2018, but nothing has been said about it.
Yeah, definitely. Let's cross to our reporter in the Northwest, Mike Maringa, giving us the celebrations and activities that are taking place down there in the Northwest. A very good morning to Michael. Just tell us, on the ground what the sentiment is, whether it's from workers or community members on May Day, or rather in Polokwane, not Northwest, apologies, just after, some of the protests that we have seen across the country, as well as that nationwide bus strike. All right, so we will cross back to Mike.
At Mukopane, at Mahwele, where hundreds of people have started gathering. This is where they are going to have a march, to march the Mahwele Stadium, where they are expected to hand over memorandums along their way. They indicated in the morning that there are 2 sectors that they are targeting. Let me bring now the Provincial Secretary of Cosatu in the province, Gerald Twala, to tell us more about their march. Mr. Twala, good morning and welcome to SABC.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk about your march. Where exactly are you marching to and how many people are you expecting?
Well, as you can see, workers have arrived at the venue. We have got 2 sections that we're targeting for our march. The first section is the private sector. As you can see, we are at Shell Garage. We are going to present a memorandum to the owner of the Shell Garage, because we've got reports that he's exploiting workers there. And the second part will be a memorandum that will be presented to the minings, the companies around here. And from there, we'll then proceed and present the final memorandum to government departments, particularly the Department of Education here.
And let's talk about the number of people that you're expecting at the venue. I see all your affiliates, the NOSA, you've got SATU, you've got CW, they are all here. How many people are you expecting at this event today?
Well, absolutely. We have got 17 affiliates of Cosatu in the province. We're expecting all of them to be here. We're expecting about 5,000 workers to be part of this celebration, including community members. They have been invited.
And then as Cosatu, you celebrate this event year in, year out. What is it that you are bringing different this year as to compare to what you have presented in the previous years?
Well, we are getting into the 2018 May Day celebration, having achieved a lot for the workers. The national minimum wage is one of the achievement, and we believe government should be fast-tracking the process of gazetting it and implementing that particular national minimum wage for our people. And we think we are going to also take this opportunity to pause and reflect on many of the challenges that are facing the workers in the country. We still have labor brokers. We still have workers who are not being paid according to sectoral determination. Your cleaners, farm workers, domestic workers, and all those things. We'll be focusing that and beginning to say, as Cosatu, we must intensify our campaigns to ensure that indeed we fight for the rights of our workers in the province.
And lastly, on logistics, we understand that there are prominent people who will be attending this event. Talk to us about that, because we still have a lot of people who are still idling at home who might want to attend this event.
Well, the keynote address is going to be presented by our first Deputy President, Comrade James Jojo, and the alliance partners as well. the African National Congress, Comrade Gwede Mantashe, the national chairperson. From the South African Communist Party, we've got the second Deputy General Secretary, Comrade Chris Matlaku, and from SANCO, we've got the President, Deputy President of SANCO, Comrade Mabathuleto.
And lastly, I can't let you go before you talk about the scarf that you're wearing. I see a lot of Cosatu leaders today, they've got their scarves on. Take us through what's happening.
Well, we think we must continue to intensify our solidarity support for the people of Palestine. That is why we've invited the Embassy of Palestine. They are here. They will be giving a message of support as well. This is part of our campaign as Cosatu to support the people of Palestine and to say to them their struggles are our own struggles. We've got experiences as South Africans where we come from an apartheid system, and we can really tell what is the feeling and the experience of the people of Palestine. So we are here indeed to show to the world that the people of Palestine are not alone. We are with them as the workers.
That was Gerald Twala, the provincial secretary of Cosatu in the province, outlining their program for the day, saying that they will be handing memorandums to different sectors in this area, Mukopani. You'll know that Mukopani is a mining area. From here, we'll be tailing them to all these sectors that they spoke about. We'll also capture all the moments as they hand over memorandums to different sectors. And for now, it's back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much for that, Mike Maringa, in the province up there in Polokwane, apologies, in Popo province in Polokwane, giving us the updates on the May Day rally celebrations and commemorations taking place. Well, the ANC Deputy Secretary General Jesse Duarte says the ANC is working very hard to find a solution on the current crisis in the northwest province of South Africa. Duarte says while government has its plans to address the northwest problem, the ANC is also engaging its structures as a governing party in the province. The aim is to bring the matter to finality. She has lamented the problem of exclusion when ANC members are jostling for power.
The ANC's methodology of working is to consult people. So we've done that now. On Wednesday, we will come together in Cape Town, have a discussion about what we think would be in the best interest of the African National Congress, and that's where we are at the moment, is to discuss and to make a decision that will be in the best interest of the ANC. We believe that there needs to be some introspection amongst people in the governance of the Northwest. It's not new mistakes that have been made. There's historical issues that come from the time of Popo Molefe. But we also believe that right now is the time to solve those problems. And the exclusion of people from the ANC has been our biggest concern. That many people who were ANC cadres for a long, long time have been deliberately over years excluded from the structures of the ANC in the Northwest and from participating in the normal course of events in the life of the African National Congress. That's the kind of conversation we will be having on Wednesday.
Well, the N3 at Moy River was reopened to traffic late yesterday after the north and southbound lanes had been closed for almost 24 hours to clear away the wreckage of the 35 trucks that were set alight on Sunday night. A violent protest action led to the burning of trucks and the subsequent closure of the N3. The 54 suspects arrested on suspicion of looting are expected to appear in court today. It's alleged that the protest was over the hiring of foreign nationals as truck drivers. The N3 toll concession says it's done temporary repairs to the lanes. It has again appealed to road users planning to use the N3 toll route to avoid travelling at night. Well, as South Africa joins the world in celebrating International Workers' Day today, the proposed minimum wage remains a burning issue to the country, with some people arguing that no one can make a decent living on 3,500 rand, while others argue that it is a starting point towards a better living wage. A minimum wage app was developed to assist the calculations on the standard of living using different salary scales, with special emphasis on the minimum wage. I'm now joined by social statistician Michael O'Donovan, who's going to tell us a bit more about the app. A very good morning to you, and thank you very much for joining us this morning. Very interesting, this app and how it works. But firstly, tell us a bit more about the app and what essentially does it aim to achieve?
It's a very simple app developed by SABC and Open Up, a non-profit organization. And basically what it tries to do is give a bit of perspective as to how much 3,500 Rand a month is. A lot of people will be saying it's a lot, a lot of people are saying it's not enough. But how far does 3,500 Rand go towards feeding your family?
Yeah.
And it's a simple way of people entering the figures and seeing, can they make ends meet? Or what do they have to do to make ends meet? So it really answers a simple question. Can you cover typical household costs and feed all your family members? And if not, how do you start fixing it? Do you have to get more money? Do you have to cut down on household expenses, or so on?
Yeah. Okay, so we actually have the app here now. So can you briefly just take us through, how it would work?
Okay. Well, the default position is 3,500 Rand.
Okay.
So we assume that the household is got one breadwinner earning the minimum wage.
Okay.
So what they do then, they enter how many members of the household there are.
Okay.
So the app then calculates from the available statistics what the typical household costs are.
Okay.
How much you need to pay for clothing and transport and school and whatever.
Okay.
Once that has been calculated, it then says, it looks at the number of people in the household and says, are you able to give all those people 3 meals a day?
Mm.
And you will see on this demo here that we've got 5 people. We haven't covered all the household costs, as you can see at the bottom.
Yeah.
But we are only getting 1 and 3/4 meals a day.
Wow.
For the household members. So the idea behind this is that really that you can have your employer sit down and ask the question, what can my employee do with what I'm offering? Because you can manipulate the 3,500 to up to 10,000 Rand.
And then see how far it would
and
spread.
then see how it goes.
Yeah.
So ultimately it is both informational, but what it's also doing, it is then enabling people to negotiate. So that I have so many people that I have to take care of. These are my household expenses. I'm not able to feed my family.
Definitely. And this is very important as deliberations and discussions now are around those labour law amendments, specifically with regards to minimum wage, with many other unions bringing to the table that, it has to go according to the salary scale of the company, as well as that of the person, how many dependents the person has.
Yes.
How important then is this app going to be in those negotiations of the minimum wage and the feedback that we can get from this?
Well, what we're trying to do here is trying to get away from the overly politicized environment, where you have people saying 3,500 is too much or too little, or it should be 8,000 or should be 12,500. So let's bring it down to what do the numbers say?
Mm-hmm.
Can we cover expenses? Can we afford the transport to get to work? Can we feed our families and thereby sustain the future workforce? So ideally what it is going to do, it's going to shift away from the more emotive language to the practicals of negotiations.
Yeah, definitely. And, so far, what has the response been and the feedback been from people?
Well, it has only very recently been received.
Okay.
And so we're still waiting for a response, but we assume it's going to be
And,
positive.
how can people access it, if any? I got a question here on Twitter, someone asking me, is it on iOS? Is it available on those platforms as yet?
No, currently what it is only available in on the internet.
Okay.
And I can't remember the address offhand, but I'm sure you can share that with them.
All right.
So they just go to the web,
Okay.
SABC, and they enter their figures, and they will get their answers immediately.
All right. And then, looking from a functionality point of view, how accurate is the app?
We have to keep this simple. right? So, for example, what we are saying that there are, we're asking people to enter how many people there are in the household. We're not asking them to say how many babies, how many adults, how many elderly, which affects the bill. So we have erred on the side of keeping it very simple. And as such, it is perhaps not as flexible as people would like, but it is so simple that just about everybody should be able to use it.
But it's enough, you know, to give an overall view of the household needs,
Because if you were to give a more nuanced perspective on it, you'd have to consider household structure, geographic location, cultural imperatives, and so on. So this is really, this is a starting point for the discussions.
Definitely. And, you know, how do you think employers are going to receive this? I mean, at the back end, this is going to put, you know, a lot of pressure.
There's a lot of pressure on this, and but employers, for example, if you're thinking of a middle-class household that wants to employ a domestic worker, they need to. They can now see that, right? If I'm paying 3,500 or 3,000, can my domestic feed their family? Can they do this? Can they do that? So it's really shifting people's minds towards what the amount actually means in practice.
But then at the same time, you know, in case in point, specifically with the domestic worker, you can't, you know, be paying your domestic worker if you have, you know, a 2-bedroom flat or 1-bedroom flat, 8,000 rand or 12,500 rand, you know?
Well, this is the unspoken part about this entire discussion. What happens to those workers that are not going to be offered the 3,500?
All right.
Are we turning around and say you're not going to feed your family?
Yeah, well, it's going to be much to be debated. Thank you very much for joining us in studio. Very interesting app that has been developed that will more or less give you the proposed minimum wage that someone would be earning. And in this app, you can put then in the figure that the person would be earning as well as the household, and it would be able to calculate whether or not that is sufficient according to that remuneration coming in. Thank you very much for joining us in studio. Michael O'Donovan telling us a bit more about the app. On that note, let's take a short break here on SABC Newsroom. When we come back, some sports availability.
This distinguished CEO would say the best way to enjoy a brandy is whilst wearing diamond-encrusted lamb's wool socks, accompanied by
the smell of fresh money.
Woo! Really? Sock diamonds?
Well, we'd say a brandy enjoyed with last night's pizza works just as well. Tops at Spa. Good brandy, good advice, no blingy socks.
Corruption both in the public and the private sectors needs to be combated.
Where there are clear cases of wrong that has been done, that must commence immediately.
Something is being done about corruption in our country.
Currency, even although it strengthened dramatically after the ANC's recent elective conference, could conceivably go stronger yet.
He had a soul that would not be for sale.
Stay tuned to Your World for your final news roundup, Monday to Sunday at 21:30.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with Newsroom. Let's bring you your sports news now. The International Athletics Federation has courted a lot of criticism following its new rules regarding hypoandrogenism. The South African sports minister has called them sexist and pointed out that they target world 800-meter champion Caster Semenya. Now there is opposition to the move from within its own organization. Professor Steve Cornelius of the Tuks Law Faculty has resigned as a member of the IAAF Disciplinary Tribunal in protest against the controversial new rule, which requires female athletes competing in events from 400 meters to the mile to maintain their testosterone levels below 5 nanomoles per liter, which affects those women who have naturally high levels of testosterone. In a hard-hitting letter to the president of the IAAF, SEBCO, Cornelius explained the reasons for his decision, saying, "On deep moral grounds, I cannot see myself part of a system in which I may be called upon to apply regulations which I deem to be fundamentally flawed and most likely unlawful in various jurisdictions around the globe. It would also be unethical for me to devote time, energy and expose a warped ideology behind the new regulations while serving on the disciplinary tribunal." Let's move on to some football news now with the UEFA Champions League and the upcoming semi-final second leg between Bayern Munich and Real Madrid. Munich head coach Jupp Heynckes has called upon referee Cüneyt Çakır of Turkey to be fair and just in the face of pressure from Real Madrid and the Bernabeu crowd. Bayern are 2-1 down after the first leg of the UEFA Champions League semi-final in Germany and will be in Spain to overturn the deficit for a place in the final.
But we had him against Paris Saint-Germain earlier this season, and he did well. What I expect from the referee in this kind of matches is to be objective, fair and just. I'm expecting a fair form of refereeing tomorrow, and I expect the players to decide the match and not the referee or assistant referees.
Unparteiisch ist und der korrekt pfeift.
Staying with international football, Barcelona celebrated their 25th La Liga title from an open-top bus which drove through their adoring fans in the Catalan capital. Lionel Messi scored a hat-trick on Sunday, winning 4-2 at Deportivo La Coruña, despite throwing away a 2-goal lead in a thrilling game, which also confirmed Deport relegation. Messi claimed his 32nd league goal of the season with the help of another pass from Luis Suarez to round off the victory and give Barca a 7th Liga title in 10 years, completing a 4th domestic double in that same period after beating Sevilla 5-0 in the Kings Cup final last week. Ernesto Valverde's unbeaten side have 86 points after 34 games. Second place Atletico have 75 from 35 and third place Real Madrid 71 from 35 matches. And South Africans and Australians won't have to wait long for the cricket rivalry between the two nations to be reignited. Cricket South Africa announced the Proteas itinerary for the next year in the build-up to the 2019 Cricket World Cup. The Tour of Australia is only one of 2 tours the South African team will go on in the next 10 months, with incoming tours of Sri Lanka, Zimbabwe and Pakistan also on the schedule. The Proteas will play 3 ODIs in addition to a single T20 international match. The Proteas will play at one new venue, with the T20 International being played on the Gold Coast. CSA Acting Chief Executive Tabang Moroy said that the concentrated program of 21 ODIs, 13 at home and 8 away ahead of the World Cup will give the national selection panel and the Proteas team management time to finalise the squad of 15 players for the World Cup. That's how we come to the end of your sports bulletin here on Newsroom. Stay with us. We'll be back at the top of the hour.
We make sure to be where news is happening, both locally and globally.
For the latest business news, stay with us.
From South Africa to the world, we've got all your latest sporting news.
Don't miss our weather updates every hour.
Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday, from 3 to 5:30 p.m. here on SABC News.
Special assignment. Crime keeps the society in terror and pain. Why so?
If someone phones me, tells me, okay, look, you need a solver, and I get you all driving, I'll take it.
What pushes normal people to be so hard, heartless, and brutally kill one another?
The other side of it could be more for their own psychological need. It might be part of a sexual fantasy that they have. It could be about power and control.
After proper investigation is followed, the perpetrator gets arrested.
It's quite a massive process. And I think we do it to our parents. I think justice is served.
Emotional scars remain.
We would pay any price to get him back, and the sad reality is that it's gone.
Special assignment. We unravel the truth every Sunday at 21:30.
SABCnews.com is your one-stop digital portal to all the news you need. With a website that is easy to use on mobile, SABC News prides itself in being the primary source of public service content across multiple platforms. Watch live streams of all the big news events on the SABC News YouTube channel, which is one of the most viewed South African YouTube channels globally. And catch up on the best of SABC television and radio news. Follow breaking news on all of the SABC News social media platforms, interact with SABC News on Facebook, and stay connected on Twitter for the latest headlines and real-time updates by our reporters. SABC News, everywhere.
There are quite a number of workers who are still not really earning the amount of money that we want them to earn. So workers want a living wage, and the minimum wage is a way of going towards a living wage. Women are still paid far less than men in our country, so today is a day to champion.
The South African President Cyril Ramaphosa defends the proposed minimum wage ahead of his maiden International Workers' Day speech.
We believe that there needs to be some introspection amongst people in the governance of the Northwest.
The Deputy Secretary General of the ANC breaks her silence on the issue of the Northwest protests. Operations have resumed at the N3 toll plaza near Moy River in KwaZulu-Natal.
And Bayern Munich head coach Jupp Heynckes has called upon referee Cosatu of Turkey to be fair and just in the face of pressure from Real Madrid and the Bernabeu crowd as the two face off in the second leg of the UEFA Champions League semi-final tonight.
Very good morning to you and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Shante Yankees. Thank you very much for joining us. Coming up this hour, we continue to give you live updates on Workers' Day commemorations across the country, as well as the build-up to President Cyril Ramaphosa's maiden address, which is set to take place in PE this morning. Standing by with your sports is Valen Kirtley. Very good morning to you, Valen. You well today?
Very well, thank you, Shante. Good to be with you. Yeah. Good morning to you and a very good morning to the viewers. I'll be bringing you your sports news here on Newsroom and I look forward to it. Let's go back to Shante for your top news stories.
The lead story at 10 o'clock, the main May Day celebration will be held in Port Elizabeth. For the latest, we are joined by SABC's Aljan Samper from Isaac Wilson Stadium at KwaZulu in Port Elizabeth in the Eastern Cape. Very good morning to you, Aljan. Can you give us the updates there on the May Day celebrations in Port Elizabeth? Of course, already a hive of activity this morning. We do also expect, of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa to be addressing the crowds around 11 a.m. this morning.
Good morning. We're coming live to you from the Isaac Wilson Stadium here in Port Elizabeth, where the main May Day rally will be taking place. And of course, as we've been indicating throughout the morning, this will be the first time we hear from Cyril Ramaphosa as the president of the ANC and president of the country addressing a May Day rally. And it'll be quite interesting to hear what he has to say. Also take into consideration what he mentioned last week during the Freedom Day celebration, and really a rebuttal to what Safta has been arguing during in their march, saying that the national minimum wage is not a living wage, and him conceding that indeed it's not a national minimum wage. Will he have more to say? It's not a living wage, rather. Will he have more to say with regards to that, and probably go into the complexities of that issue? Right now, let me bring in a business reporter, and who reports a lot on labor-related issues. Teto Matlakwana, who joins us now here in studio. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let's quickly speak about the state of the federation called Cosatu. Of course, it's their main May Day rally taking place here. How would you sum it up?
Well, Cosatu is at a crossroads. Aldrin, once again, we know that its history is quite tumultuous, and the Federation has gone through quite a lot since the expulsion of NUMSA and the dismissal of its former General Secretary, Zolinzi Mavavi, who has now established Safta. So the crossroads I speak of is because they've once again started a new journey with a new president that they've been in support of and that they campaigned for him to be the head of the ANC. And how Cosatu engages with President Ramaphosa from this point forward will be very telling, because they've been quite bruised in the past. The relationship with President Jacob Zuma, of course, had fallen apart completely by the time he stepped out of office. And whatever it is that the Federation is dealing with, whether it be collective bargaining matters or it be its significance or relevance in the alliance, will be very telling in how they engage with Ramaphosa. And unfortunately, so far, they have not done so well in my perspective, because you have currently, as we are celebrating May Day, a strike by bus service drivers who have literally been on strike for 2 weeks, affecting hundreds and thousands of commuters across the country. That strike is led by a Cosatu union. Why is it that that influence that Cosatu claims to have politically is unable, for example, to solve that impasse? You have public servants who are currently in negotiations. Again, despite meetings with President Ramaphosa, Cosatu has not gotten a leeway. So that's the crossroads I speak of, that how they handle all of these issues and their relational dynamics with President Ramaphosa will determine its relevance and its might going forward.
Of course, 2012 saw Cosatu hit really rock bottom, where you had NUMSA, who had now become the biggest union in the country at the time, overtaking NUM, being expelled from Cosatu, and one then wonders whether Cosatu has been able to be resilient, considering as well that FAO then decided that they're also leaving the Federation, and whether this may have had an impact on the party's balance book, rather the Federation's balance book.
Yes, it did. During their last Central Committee, of course, they admitted to that very fact, that NUMSA's expulsion had hit them in the pocket, and that's when we saw, of course, them demanding that NUMSA pay some of the contributions that they had not paid up until their departure. And that was basically demonstrating that they are struggling as a federation. And of course, let's just say, FAO left, but also there are those unions that are affiliated to Cosatu, which have since that historic Central Executive Committee decided to abandon ship. They have not done so officially, but they have abandoned ship. We have the undeclared status of, for example, unions like SABC, which is still very divided, and you have some within that union wanting to lean towards Safta. You have the South African Football Union as well, which is still pretty much leaning towards Safta, yet they have not yet pronounced on their departure from Cosatu. That is why even earlier we could not get from Cosatu itself a clear figure as to exactly how many affiliates it's got, because it's unable to even just determine that very fact, giving us roughly a figure of about 15 for a federation that had close to 20 affiliates at some point. That is a weakening, and you cannot avoid the financial impact thereof, because as much as you have those unions, which are predominantly public sector unions in the federation, you still need that footing in the private sector, where NUMSA, of course, is deeply entrenched. So there's that imbalance, which, of course, is not good to have a federation that has what former General Secretary of the ANC, Gweta Mantashe, called yellow unions.
Yeah. And here's the thing about the finances of Cosatu, is that this is very important, because Cosatu also sponsors the ANC's election campaign.
Well, that's the other thing. And, you know, it takes us back to the reasons why NUMSA was expelled, of course, because NUMSA's contestation was that we cannot continue contributing financially and even just human resource to campaign on the ground for this party that does not seem to consider us when we're talking workers' issues. So it's not the only aspect to look at, but also you have to look at the fact that Cosatu has to be doing, it should be doing groundbreaking work around research, around how they're going to reposition themselves as unions in the future, given the kind of different landscape that we're all looking at in terms of the fourth industrial revolution, the future of work, how value chains have changed, how organizing is not as plain simply as getting a placard and holding a march. There must be more that should be done, but Cosatu is unable to do that because it does not have the kind of resources it used to have that led their research unit called Naledi at the time. So those are some of the deficiencies that, of course, are as a result of the lack of financial muscle given those decisions that were made in the past.
And I think this will be a big issue when the Federation goes to its Congress, expected to happen in September. And I wonder where this then puts Stumo Dlamini, and if at all he will put up his hand and say that I'm available for re-election. Would he be confident enough, also considering that the man who was behind him, former president of the ANC, Jacob Zuma, is no longer there as the president of the ANC, but seemingly probably still has some political power here and there?
Aldrin, the Cosatu president is conflicted in a lot of ways. We saw the recent reports, of course, that implicated him to a fraudulent deal that went on. Of course, again, the link to former President Jacob Zuma is also one of the Achilles heels he would have to overcome if he were to cement his place again in the hearts of workers. But from what I get on the ground from interactions with some of the leaders of their affiliates, he is not a man who is likely to come back from the September Congress because he is so conflicted that they are unable to, for example, guarantee that workers would not boo him today if he addressed them because of the scandals that, of course, have come up in the recent past. So it's quite interesting as well that he does not have particularly that support, as you mentioned, through the close relationship he had with former President Jacob Zuma. But he is a member of Nehau, and we recently found out that, of course, he was re-elected as a shop steward within Nehau, which may be an indication that, in fact, he does look at making a comeback. But the question is, do workers have enough trust in his leadership?
Just before we go to Sarah Kimani standing by in Kenya, does Zingiswa Lose at all stand a chance? Because there had been some talks last year already that they want to get rid of Stumo Dlamini. This is now members of the CEC of the Federation wanted to get rid of Stumo Dlamini, and probably the person who'd be acting in that position as president would be Zingiswa Lose, who now, of course, has been elected as an NEC member of the ANC. Does she stand a chance?
Someone made a very important point. They said if we trusted her enough to want to push her candidacy in the ANC leadership top 6, why would we not trust her to head Cosatu? And I think that's valid on its own, because the workers have suggested that they believe in her capabilities. And also, given the nature of the demographics of Cosatu's own members, they've got a lot of women as their members. The Federation has not had a female president in its history. In fact, she, if is elected president, would be one of the very first Federation leaders across the continent, across the world. And that would be quite historic, given the fact that we know there's quite increased pressure, even in the social discourse, to suggest that the voice of women is lacking. Why do we not have women who can, for example, push for equal pay? You know, simple as that, because she would have had the anecdotal evidence of having lived that experience. So she does stand a chance. She seems to have a lot of support in the affiliates leadership. The conversations that we are having suggest that they are looking at no one else but her.
Teto Matlakwane, thank you so much for your time. Of course, she will be with us throughout the morning as we cover the official May Day rally taking place here in Port Elizabeth. Let's go to Kenya. As we've indicated that today is, of course, International May Day. It's not only May Day here in South Africa, but it's May Day across the world. And we now go over to Sarah Kimani, who's standing by in Kenya.
Right, just trying to get hold there of Sarah Kamani coming to us from East Africa, our correspondent there, as it is not only May Day celebrations here in South Africa, but it is in fact International May Day. Well, we are joined still in studio by political analyst Kaya Sitole, giving us analysis on issues affecting South African workers, while also still noting some of the progress that has been made in certain areas. Very good morning to you once again, Kaya. Thank you very much for staying with us throughout the course of the morning. You know, we've discussed some of the challenges, we've discussed, you know, some of the issues. Let's have a look, you know, on a more positive note, some of the achievements and the gains that we have made, you know, over the past couple of democratic years.
I would say, I mean, undoubtedly workers' rights are far more entrenched under this government than they were in the apartheid era, and you've seen there's various legislations, instruments that are really aimed at protecting people from abuse and exploitation by employers and by capitalism, as some socialists would say. So I do think that we cannot dispute that the plight of the workers is much better under this ANC government than it was before. And I think, you know, examples that we've seen, things like the Labour Relations Act, which seeks to sort of stop this arbitrary hiring and firing of workers, which leaves people very exposed and very vulnerable, not knowing whether they've got job security or not. So I think that it has been a long journey to get us here, but of course there are parts of it that are still work in progress. The national minimum wage being one example of something that probably should have been implemented long ago, but it was always going to be a war of attrition just to get to a point of saying this is a number that we're starting with. And I think we've seen the president of the country saying that, look, it's definitely not the final solution, but it's much closer. It's much better than what we had before, when there was simply no reference point into saying that this is the minimum that a person should be earning if they're doing a particular job. And of course, it's always going to be a hotly contested issue. And I think earlier on when we were talking about that app, it was really a question of, should we consider the person's own circumstances in setting a particular wage? So if a person has got 10 or 12 beneficiaries that they're looking after at home, does it mean that they now should get a much higher wage? And then does it mean that a person who's got less beneficiaries should be getting a different number?
Doing the same job.
Yeah, because then people are like, well, we're doing the same job, and perhaps we should not bring family dynamics into the workplace, because that taints the conversation somewhat. But of course, it's also quite important for us to be able to acknowledge that a person who does have multiple beneficiaries, we know the social circumstances in the country, and that in some cases you've got breadwinners because, you know, there are orphans in the family that they've decided to take care of. Should we then be blind to the reality of the fact that some people actually have a very high burden of taking care of other individuals within the family who themselves are not in a position to earn an income, who are not able to get a job? So it's always going to be a very topical issue that we need to sort of try and figure a way around. But I do think that even now, when you talk about 3,500 Rand, a lot of people will acknowledge that it's probably not the right number. It is way too low. And I think also there's a question that in South Africa we probably don't interrogate, in that the people who are probably going to end up earning that wage are the people who pay so much more just to access the workplace. So of course for them, there's the transport costs eat a significant part of that income. So how do we then navigate around that? Should we then perhaps try and find subsidies in the public transportation system? Some people would say that, you know, we already have an over-subsidized public transport system, but clearly there is a scope for doing a lot more to assist the workers who are subject to these very low wages. So I do think that it's definitely an ongoing conversation.
It definitely is an ongoing conversation. Let's just move away from that now. Let's talk unions, especially in the past 2 weeks. So we'll start with Cosatu. There's definitely been a rift with Cosatu and its alliance partners, you know, in the past. How are we going to then describe, or how do we see the relationship with Cyril Ramaphosa going forward?
Look, of course, the Cosatu relationship with the ANC over the past couple of years has been very, very full of tensions. We even remember last year that, you know, the May Day celebrations had to be abandoned because people just didn't want to be addressed by the former President Jacob Zuma. So those tensions have sort of escalated into the public arena over the past 10 years, as it were. And of course, it was on the back that they really supported the elevation of President Jacob Zuma into the presidency of the ANC, and then eventually the presidency of the country. But of course, there was this unwritten agreement that, you know, if we elevate you, you're going to champion workers' rights, you're going to champion, you know, what it is that we stand for as Cosatu. And I think that the union sort of saw this as a broken conversation between them and the ANC at large, which is when you saw that they started fracturing those relationships. But of course, 10 years later, then Cosatu then decided that they wanted to back Cyril Ramaphosa's elevation into the presidency of the ANC, and even that it's on the basis that they had particular expectations, because one cannot dispute that Cosatu carries a massive constituency, and this is a constituency that the ANC needs desperately, especially ahead of a general election. So they're going to have to try and manage and massage this relationship very well over the next 12 months, just so that, you know, at least Cosatu can feel that they are being heard, that they're being are included as part of the bargaining conversation between, you know, Labour government and, you know, the ANC itself. So I do think that we're going to see an improvement in relations over the next 12 months. But of course, Cosatu is no longer what it was about 10 years ago, because there's been this breakaway, which is Safta itself. So you also have to acknowledge that Cosatu probably isn't as strong a bargainer as it was back then. Perhaps they should try and sort of re-energize themselves and say we are still a critical constituency in this particular alliance, whichever way the alliance becomes configured in the future.
Definitely. Let's cross to Sarah Kamani, our East African correspondent, taking us through May Day celebrations on the eastern side of the continent. A very good morning to you, Sarah. How are negotiations and commemorations, rather, taking place your end?
Well, indeed, celebrations to mark Labour Day, as it is known here in Kenya, and what is known as Workers' Day internationally are underway in Nairobi at Uhuru Park Stadium. I will slowly move out of shot, and you can just see what is happening now, which is various organizations exhibiting their work. We have their various unions. We have communication workers of Kenya. That would involve journalists, public relations experts, just passing by, and they'll pass outside the dais where the visitors coming to today's events will be able to see them. Next behind them is the Postal Corporation of Kenya. Previously, we had a lot of other unionizable organizations coming to just exhibit and say what they have to offer. Now, what happens after this is that we expect that the trade unions will issue a statement. They will be talking about the expectations for this year as workers. And after that, President Kenyatta will also be delivering his speech. Now, it will be interesting to just go through and listen to what both the president will say and what the Central Organization of Trade Unions, COTU, the equivalent of South Africa's Cosatu, will be saying. Because if you've been following news from Kenya, last year was quite a tough year, quite one of the years that the country was dogged by industrial strikes. We had doctors going on strike for more than 100 days. We had nurses going on strike. We had teachers on strike. We had lecturers on strike. And lecturers have again gone onto the streets. They're out of the classrooms demanding to be paid. So it will be interesting to hear what President Kenyatta says in terms of workers' demands. We understand that COTU, the umbrella organization for all the unions in the country, will be demanding an 18% minimum wage increase. But we understand that President Kenyatta is saying there is no money. The public wage bill is already too big. 56% of all the money collected in Kenya is going to paying public servants. So they may say that there will be no money. We expect to hear what they will say. Thank you very much. From Nairobi, we'll be updating you at exactly 3 p.m. to just tell you what will transpire from Uhuru Park later on in the day.
Thank you very much, Sarah Kimani, for SABC News, coming to us, giving us information from eastern Kenya as to how May Day celebrations are taking place. That and still in studio with political analyst Kaya Sitole. Of course, just before we crossed over to Sarah, we were talking about Cosatu, the unions, and the relationship between Ramaphosa, and then now also bringing Safta into the fore. Is Safta a threat to Cosatu?
I would think that, you know, Safta is going to play a very critical role in basically how labor unions across the country are perceived going forward. Now, the question of whether they're going to become a massive threat to Cosatu, it really is something that Cosatu itself should be able to manage and say, what is it that we can do to sort of entrench the rights and the liberties of the workers that are still under the Cosatu umbrella. So Cosatu, of course, has got the longer history, they've got the legacy, so they are in a position to then say, actually, there's a new union that is emerging. How do we, you know, keep them out of keep them away from being a threat to our, to our hegemony, as it were. So what they'd have to do is then simply go back and identify what it is that remain critical issues as far as their constituents are concerned, and say, okay, how is it that we can address those issues? And they should be able to address them in a manner that is obviously far more cohesive than what Safta will be able to manage. And of course, because they are already part of the alliance, you get the impression that they're already a step ahead when it comes to bargaining, at least with the politicians. So I do think that Cosatu should simply find a way of entrenching that particular role. But of course, if they do slack and if they sort of take the eye of the ball, then of course Safta is going to be a big threat to them, because there's a lot of people that feel like perhaps Cosatu hasn't really championed workers' issues in the past 10 years. They tend to be gravitating towards the political issues. They tend to be sucked into the vortex of succession battles and all of that. And of course, workers' issues should be what drives Cosatu, rather than pushing for particular political positions or particular political appointments whom they then assume are going to assist them. So it's sort of the wrong approach to it, in that they try to pursue the politicians and then say, if we get that politician, our agenda will be championed. That was the mistake that they say they made with President Jacob Zuma. So perhaps they should sort of start looking at it a bit different, which is to say, this is our agenda as workers. And of course, if you want our vote, then you have to do it.
Definitely. Speaking of workers, let's cross to the northwest, where workers are gathering at the Mahikeng Rugby Stadium to celebrate Workers' Day today. Selwani Kakao is standing by with the latest. A very good morning to you, Selwani. What is the mood on the ground, specifically in Mahikeng? We've just seen those protests taking place in the past couple of weeks. They're very, very angry community members and residents. And, one of the issues that they did bring up through service delivery was lack of employment and lack of opportunity to employment.
Well, good morning indeed. We are coming live to you from Mahikeng CBD. This is actually Victoria taxi rank, where the ANC's alliance partners, including Cosatu, Nehawu, Dinosa, are here, of course, for the march for the Workers' Day. Right now, we are going to chat more about this with Cosatu's Deputy General Secretary, Soli Petwe. He'll give us more details about this march. But Asoli, tell me, I see there's a march here. Why was it so important for you to take the march here today?
Well, it's important that Cosatu in the National Congress of 2015 took a decision that all the May Day from 2016 must be celebrated, starting with the marches. The march is we're handing over memorandums to the Department of Labor, to government, as you know, that in particular in this province, workers are facing a serious challenge of exploitation. So the reason why we're here today is because we're starting with the march. We want all the shops to be closed. I'm sure you will all remember that one of the demands that Cosatu has put to government of the ANC, in particular to the president of the ANC, Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, is that National May Day must be declared as a non-trading holiday, which means all the shops must be closed so that workers are allowed to celebrate their Workers' Day.
Okay, so today the shops that we see operating will be closed?
Yes, definitely. We were sending a message today to them. That's why we started the march here, that these shops must be closed. But as I said, most of the issues here around here, domestic workers, security workers, cleaning workers, retail workers are being exploited, are not paid according to the sectoral determination. As you know, that Cosatu has supported the national minimum wage. The national minimum is to address these challenges that we are facing here today in relation to these issues that workers are facing in the Northwest, in the country as a whole.
And Braswali, we've also been seeing that Nehawu members have been on strike, calling for various things to happen, especially within the Department of Health and the Department of Social Development, including the outstanding performance bonuses, which have been outstanding for 3 years right now, as well as salary adjustments that are not being taken care of. As Cosatu, what would you say with regards to that?
Well, I think we must congratulate Nehawu and Dinos and other unions that has taken up those issues. That is the role of the trade union movement. Workers, when they join the union, they join the unions for two things: to improve conditions of service, which improve the living wages, they improve the salaries, but also to defend workers when they are being charged or they are subjected to a disciplinary hearing. Nehawu and Dinosa, Cosatu is supporting them because they are raising critical issues that are affecting the workers. It has been too long that these unions are raising these issues. At the time when I was still here, we were raising this issue, and this issue has not been addressed. And I think we are really going to ask the government of South Africa to intervene. As they've put the Department of Health under administration, we are calling that the entire Northwest government must be put under administration. Those who are implicated must face the music.
Thank you very much, Brasoli. That's the Cosatu's Deputy General Secretary, Soli Petwe, telling us that as the ANC's alliance, they congratulate Nehawu on ensuring that they continue with their strike, their protest, demanding for their rights as workers, which include that they must be paid performance bonuses. They must also be seeing the salary increases or salary adjustments yearly as they're supposed to happen. We also can tell you that we have seen right now arriving to where we are ANC, NEC members, including Nomvula Mukonyani, Obed Bapela, as well as Malusi Gigaba. But whether or not they're going to address today remains to be seen, but we'll definitely be keeping you updated with what happens on our side. It's back to you for now, studio.
Very much for that. SABC's Selwaleka Gao from the Northwest capital in Mahikeng, taking us through May Day commemorations that side. Continuing with that coverage, the national coverage of the May Day celebrations in Durban today. Labour Federation Cosatu will be marching through the streets of the city as well as converging at the Curry's Fountain. SABC's Ayanda Mplongo is on the ground following proceedings and is going to give us an update in just a bit. Very good morning to you, Ayanda. What is happening? Give us a heads up on what we can expect from the Banana City.
Yeah, very good morning to you, Shantane. Good morning to our viewers at home. Certainly, Cosatu has said that this morning they will shut down the streets of Durban. As you can see behind us, Cosatu members have started arriving here outside the Durban City Hall this morning, and that is where they will be gathering before they make their way through the city to Curry's Fountain, which is where they will then hold a mini rally this afternoon, where the leadership of Cosatu will then address the thousands that are expected to be here today. Of course, there are 4 rallies that are taking place across the province of KwaZulu-Natal this morning. The main one, of course, is going to be here in Durban, and Cosatu is saying that indeed they will be out in their numbers. Workers from across various sectors, across their affiliates, will be out here today as workers across the country commemorate May Day. They're saying that it's an important day for workers, and they've urged that workers, members of the community who support the cause of workers, that they too come out here today and they make a stand to say that there's still many a challenge that is affecting the workers in South Africa, and that workers need to come together today to show their frustration, to voice the concerns that they have, and to fight for the rights for workers, to fight for better working conditions of workers in South Africa. And of course, to discuss, they'll also be addressing Cosatu's position when it comes to discussions around labour law amendments, as well as the minimum wage, which has been a topic of much discussion more recently. You know that Safta as well, just earlier this week, held their march, and they were also spoke out about the minimum wage. They spoke about the amendments to labour laws, and today Cosatu as well will be continuing to articulate in terms of the leadership, that is, their position of Cosatu and what Cosatu is doing in the fight for workers to improve workers' conditions. Now, I speak of Safta, Shantane. I tell you, in the CBD today, it's going to be very, very busy and a bit tricky because up the streets of Durban, up Main Street, which is Pixigasema Street, the South African Federation of Trade Unions, Safta, their members are gathering as we speak. They will be making their way down the Main Street, which is Pixigasema Street, or mostly well known as West Street, and their march will end up here at the Durban City Hall, So we understand that there's going to be a slight timing. The two groups, Cosatu, as they make their way up to Curry's Fountain, they will pass Safta who will be making their way down. And we spoke to the leadership of Safta as well, and they said on their side they've got about 3,000 members in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. All of their members are expected to be part of their march this morning. They too have also appealed to members of the public to come forth and join the Safta march. So Ashante, it's going to be really busy here in the streets of Durban this morning. Both trade union federations saying they want to shut down the streets of Durban. We are going to be on the ground. Hopefully a little bit later we'll be speaking to the leadership of Cosatu. They're in a briefing at the moment. They will then make their way to where we are. We will just be speaking to them about their plans at this morning. And yeah, but certainly, as I said, it's going to be quite a busy day in this Durban CBD. And I guess for the police, they're going to have their hands full. But we're on the ground and we'll be giving you all the latest of the Cosatu march as well as the Safta march. Shante.
Thank you very much. Ayanda Mhlobo from Durban taking us through both Safta as well as Cosatu union members and their activities and their route of march today on May Day. Let's now cross to Port Elizabeth, where Cyril Ramaphosa is set to be addressing the May Day rally that side. We cross over now to SABC's Unati Binkose, who is on the ground. A very good morning to you. It seems that the stadium is starting to fill up. Take us through proceedings your end.
A very good morning to you, Sunday, and a warm welcome to all our SABC News viewers. Indeed, we're coming to you live from KwaZakele at Wolfson Stadium. If you look around, the stadium is still a bit sparse at the moment, but you understand that there are a lot of people who are marching from Nangoza Jebe to here, and I'm sure by the time they get here, this stadium will be filled to the brim. But of course, we do have people behind me. As you can see, they are in high spirits, and of course, we'll be speaking to them. Sir, let us start with you, sir. You could have been anywhere, but you've decided to be here. What do you want to hear the president speaking about?
The president, I want to hear him speaking about minimum wage, particularly living wage. That's where we're going at.
20 rand at the moment. Do you feel it's fair?
It's fair. It's a good start for everyone. We need to start somewhere. The government, I think, is going to do great. Because if we start somewhere, it means there's a way we are going to living wage. That's where we are going through.
All right, let us move over to the lady here. Ma'am, wearing an SACP t-shirt. Big day today. What do you want to hear from the president?
Big day indeed. We are enjoying ourselves. It's International Workers' Day. And we are so grateful today that the president and the Tripartite Alliance members are joining us. We feel that we belong somewhere. Our president is our president, and we're looking forward to unemployment to be attended to.
All right, ma'am, one topical issue is the working conditions. Do you think, what do you think about that, working conditions for the workers at the moment? Are they conducive?
At the moment, our government is really trying their best. We are not where we're supposed to be, but in the steps that they're taking, the baby steps that they're taking, it shows that there is a brighter light at the end of the tunnel. So by the way that our president is doing, being part of the people, as you've seen him this morning, doing the walkabout, it shows that he is yet supporting us. We're happy when it comes to that.
Wonderful, ma'am. Thank you very much. Let us welcome the lady here. Ma'am, I understand that there is an ongoing bus strike, which may have made it difficult for you guys to get here. Let's start there. How did you get here?
To get here, I used my car. So the strike didn't affect me.
Wonderful. It shows how committed you are to the cause of the workers. And what would you like to hear emanating from this rally here?
As a teacher, I want the government to listen to our grievances as one teacher, one subject, one teacher, one learning area in the classroom. Overload of work in the classroom. We are having a multi-grade classes, but we want one teacher in the class, one teacher, one subject.
Before I let you go, I see you are from Cosatu, and Cosatu has come under a lot of stick for quite a number of, accused of quite a number of things, from laziness to, being blamed for the poor results in the Eastern Cape.
No, we're so, as a teacher, we are committed to our work, but there are some who are not committed. But as I am as a teacher, I am committed to my work.
Wonderful. Just before we wrap up this broadcast, let's hear from you, my brother.
Yes, Budi. Okay, thanks, Budi, man, for giving this opportunity, Budi. Now, Budi, I'm coming from Union Nactu, which is under retain. So, Budi, we're here to say, at least, Budi, our employers must give us a minimum. It's not living wage. At least, Budi, 20 rand, no, not less than that, 20 rand.
The minimum wage is 20 bucks. Are you happy with that?
I will say, Budi, it's a start, Budi. It's not living wage. It's a start, Budi. So I said, I'm quite happy at the moment, Budi. If government can introduce something, forcing employers to give us at least 20 rand an hour, Budi. Because for no, Budi, they are even robbing us overtime. They don't give us the overtime.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you very much. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, these workers that are already here, they are here on a mission. There are certain things that they are demanding from their government, from the living wage to working conditions in their workplace. One thing I've got to mention before we let you go is that the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, as it has always been for quite a while now, it is again a contested area, because I can tell you that another federation, Safta, under the leadership of former Cosatu Secretary General Zimbabwean, is also here at Kwazakele holding its very own rally. We've been there already a while back, and I've spoken to Zimbabwean. He has committed, he has actually confirmed that indeed he will be here to address that rally. It goes on to show how contested this Nelson Mandela Bay Metro is, and of course the weather gods have played along. They are giving the residents of this area absolutely no excuse to be part of the Workers' Day rallies. And of course, they've got a wide range of choices to choose from. They are either here at Wolfson Stadium with Cosatu, or they can go to another one where Safta will be holding its own. I understand it will be happening at Lilian Goyi, also right here in Kwazakele. For now, allow us to wrap, and we'll give you updates as things are beginning to take shape right here at Wolfson Stadium.
Thank you very much. Unati Binkose for SABC News in Port Elizabeth. As we await President Cyril Ramaphosa, he is set to address the crowds there this morning. Still in conversation with our political analyst, Kai Sitole, this morning. Let's just talk about specifically now the location that we're actually seeing Cyril Ramaphosa choosing to host his events. Freedom Day, he was also in Port Elizabeth. May Day once again in Port Elizabeth. Let's have a look at, the strategies behind that.
It's important, of course. Remember, the ANC lost control of the metro in the 2016 local government elections, and since then they've really been trying to re-establish themselves as a party of choice in that particular community. So you're going to see a lot of those events that are gravitating towards that particular area, because even the coalition government that governs it, it's not really doing so with an overwhelming majority. So the ANC still forms the opinion that they could take the city back if they sort of started doing things the right way. So they wanted to be more visible there, because you really got the impression that in previous years they'd become a bit less visible within that area, which then allowed the space for something like the DA to sort of emerge and sort of even take over that metro. So I do think that it's part of a bigger strategy, which is to say we are still here as the ANC. We still want to listen to your concerns. So in as much as you can get an event to be done within that particular community, we will do so. And of course, it's a good choice that they've even chosen a township setting so that they can connect more with the people that they really want to be appealing to. And of course, another important thing is that in the middle of a bus strike, you don't want to have this problem of people not being able to access a particular rally. So if you bring it to the community, you're sort of working towards that consensus of saying, actually, we're here to listen to you as the African National Congress. And then, of course, Zimbabwean also, choosing his location. We heard that, we do know that Cosatu as well as Safta will be hosting rallies all throughout the country. He had chosen a different designation or location rather. And then hearing just this morning from our reporter, Alvin Sampe, that no, in fact, Zimbabwean is also going to be hosting a rally in Port Elizabeth this morning. Yeah, quite interesting that there seems to have been a last-minute change. He was supposed to be speaking in Bloemfontein. In fact, the speaking list for Bloemfontein had him as recently as last night. And then they're now saying that no, he's actually decided to go to Port Elizabeth, which is, of course, probably the epicenter of the main celebrations today, because the president of the ANC was speaking participating there, and Cosatu is obviously going to be part of that rally. And Safta has also then decided that they also want to have a presence, a visibility in that area. So of course they didn't want to lose out on the political capital, so they wanted their heavyweight, which is Zimbabwean, to also be in the area to sort of drum up as much support as you can. And I suppose that in some cases there'll be community members who then realize that, oops, actually the Safta rally is much closer to where we stay, so perhaps let's go and listen to that. So these are the people that just want to listen to some speech or the other, want to engage with this whole idea of a May Day rally. So they'll be able to pick up even people on the basis that just on questions of proximity alone, those people will say Safta is actually where we're closer, much closer to where we are, so let's go and listen to what they're saying. So I do think that it's been very well staged politically, which is just to say, if people are going to be talking about Port Elizabeth, we also need to have a presence there. And of course, then you're going to be watching these dynamics play themselves out. You'll probably even see the timing of the speech by Zimbabwean is that because he doesn't want to be competing with the president of the ANC, they will wait until he's done and then say, oh, now let us do our talking, because you don't want to sort of sacrifice the political and the PR capital associated with the celebration of this nature.
Yeah, you know, many people, you know, just even hearing from Unaji's guest that he had there, many people are waiting to hear about any announcement specifically around the minimum wage. But then, you know, hearing President Cyril Ramaphosa saying that, you know, he somewhat coming in defense of the national minimum wage, how is that likely to be spoken about, number one, and, you know, challenged, number two?
Look, I mean, it's a very difficult space for him because, of course, he was a champion of the whole NEDLAC process, which led this negotiation behind the minimum wage. So he always represented government there. So for him, he understands the very inception of the national minimum wage conversation has been there, every part of the journey. So for him, it is something that he has obviously been intimately engaged in. And of course, now there is this tension in that if we've come up with a number, he, as the president of the country and the leader of the alliance, has to stand by that number, whether he personally agrees with it or not. So he has to say that, look, this is what we have on the table now. And I think even his wording has been very well crafted in that he says it's not really the final stop. It is, you know, a step towards something much better, something much bigger. Now the question of how long will it take for us to sort of start talking about even what should be the annual inflationary adjustment on this minimum wage, because clearly it cannot stay at the same level. So these are the conversations that now need to start evolving over the next couple of months. It is obviously quite tragic that even the 3,500 Rand is still not in force because there's been the delay in implementation. We're now hearing that it could possibly be August. And the reality is that obviously the people that are mostly affected by this, which are the workers themselves that are going to be receiving this wage, probably cannot afford a delay of a day. So for us to then be playing political games behind the scenes and simply not giving people tangible timelines of saying, but guaranteed on this particular date you will be getting this minimum wage, and if you are below it, what is it that we're going to do in order to facilitate that you get access to that wage? These are conversations that should be fast-tracked, because clearly this is going to be a political hot potato over the next a couple of months. And of course, with the emergence of Safta, who themselves don't obviously think that they were part of the NEDLAC process, so they don't have to champion this wage, even though they might acknowledge that it's a bigger step than what it was before. But because they were not part of that negotiation, they can simply say that the number is too low. But that gets them the political mileage. People are saying, actually, Safta is saying that 3,500 is too low. Why is Cosatu defending it? So you're going to see that playing out in the public arena over the next couple of months.
Yeah, no, definitely. Let's cross now to our reporter, Sibongile. She's giving us updates from Bombela in Mpumalanga as we continue to give you live nationwide coverage of the May Day rallies taking place across the country. A very good morning to Sibongile. Your end, what's happening? I'm seeing, you know, those numbers there and a little bit of color behind you.
Yes, good morning. We're coming to you live from Mpumalanga Stadium in Emelo, where Cosatu, SACP and the ANC are celebrating Workers' Day with a different tune today. They are saying that they are for returning the land to its rightful owners. So today from here, from this stadium, they will be marching for land through the CBD of Emelo. We've seen some of the ministers, Minister Nati Mtetwa, Minister Naledi Pando, Minister Nkwana Mashamaite of Land Reform here also present, and we've seen local MECs from Mpumalanga. We've seen SACP Deputy Secretary Solima Paile is also present here, and other Cosatu members. But with me to tell us the program of the day is the Deputy Secretary in the province, Mr. Thabo. Thabo, sir, just tell us what's going to happen from here.
From here we will be marching, we'll be proceeding with the march to the land affairs offices. That's where we will be having our main addresses. We will have the national leadership of SANCO addressing, followed by the SACP leadership, followed by the ANC leadership. Thereafter, we will then have the keynote address by our CEC member and the Deputy President of NIHAO, Mr. Mike Shingange, making the keynote address. And thereafter, we'll then deliver our memorandum of demands on the issues that we want to raise. The issues that we have raised are those that we have just alluded to. Thank you.
You've taken a different tune. Today we're celebrating Workers' Day, but you, on the other hand, have raised the issue of land. What are you saying?
We are quite depressed and disappointed with the state of affairs in this area of Gertsibande. Most of the farm dwellers and farm workers are highly exploited, and their conditions are quite terrible. You will take note that most of the farm dwellers there are high levels of evictions in this area. The issues of extension of Tenure and Security Act is completely not complied with. Issues of labor legislation that governs farm workers are completely ignored by farmers. Those are the issues that we want to raise with the government very sharply. We are quite disappointed. There are constant evictions of farm dwellers in this area. This area is very rife of such incidences. Hence, we had felt that as Cosatu, we must take up this campaign today. I thank you.
I understand in the past there were those cases where farm dwellers were being victims and evicted off the farms. I remember that the now Deputy President Titi Mabuza intervened and there was a commission formed to address those issues. Are you saying that is not enough?
What we will be saying in our memorandum is that there were findings made by the commission, but those findings must make an impact. There has not been any impact that has been made. We have had the findings, but we want to see the findings producing results to the affected people. If we say there was an eviction there, we must hear that these people have been brought back. If we say there has been a claim that was made, we must see these people benefiting from that claim. Now, the findings of the commission were just findings that were made, but we don't have the tangible and concrete results that we can say we are feeling those results. Hence, we say we are making follow-up to the commission that was instituted by the former chairperson of this province and the former premier, Mr. Titi Mabuza.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mukwena. That was Thabo Mukwena, who is the provincial secretary of Cosatu here in Mpumalanga. Well, you've heard it, Pearl. Their mission is on land and also though targeting farms where farm dwellers have been victims of evictions, and those people have been born in those farmers, but new farm owners buy that land and evict the people that have been staying there. That's what they're concentrating on. From here, the main address will be in town at the CBD, where they will be handing over their memorandum to the Land Reform Department. Luckily for them, the Minister of Land Reform is also here, Nkwane Mashamaete. She will hear for herself what those demands are. And with that, back to you in studio.
Thank you very much, Spongile, coming to us from Mbombela in Mpumalanga, giving us those May Day rally celebrations there. Well, as Zimbabwean workers also join the rest of the world in commemorating International Workers' Day, they are also reflecting on their working conditions and other issues affecting them, such as salaries. Well, this year's celebrations follows doctors' strikes and an impasse which saw nurses at public government hospitals approaching the High Court to seek nullification of the decision by the country's Vice President, Constantino Chiwenga, to expel them from their jobs for participating in a labour strike. Although the nurses have withdrawn their court bid, teachers have also threatened to embark on a similar job action, and there are indications that they will be met with the same fate. The Zimbabwean Congress of Trade Unions believes it is time for all workers in the country to unite and resist government efforts to suppress them.
We have a reactionary government. We have a government that is not open to citizens' views, a government that does not respond to citizens' issues. It was nurses, it's going to be teachers. They've already indicated and threatened that they'll fire the whole teachers. I don't think there's a country that can be run like that unless they've got other plans which are not to develop and to build the economy again. If you are to build this economy, you need everyone at least to think and understand that you know what you are doing. And if your response is to fire every worker who is asking for collective bargaining, the teachers are asking government to come to the table, and government is refusing. So the workers have been given the government some chance, but now workers have awakened. They now know that there's no difference with the old regime, and workers should just arise, organize, and start their struggle again, and make sure that they defend their territory and their dignity.
Well, Botswana's newly inaugurated President Mokgweetsi Masisi paid his first courtesy visit to Lesotho. A high-profile delegation consisting of 5 cabinet members and some members of parliament jetted into Lesotho on Monday. They paid a courtesy call to His Majesty King Lesedi III. Botswana and Basotho share deep cultural and diplomatic relations.
The Botswana's presidential entourage arriving in Lesotho following President Masisi's inauguration last month. They paid a courtesy call to His Majesty King Lesedi III.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
While most of the talks will be held behind closed doors, it is expected that Lesotho's water and minerals might top the agenda.
You know, it was a visit to reconnect and rejuvenate our bilateral relations, our diplomatic relations, immediately following my ascension to the presidency in Botswana. And so we're back into doing a lot more business together, faster, with more urgency, and we've committed to hosting our first JPC meeting in Botswana in the not too distant future, based on a wide array of issues.
President Masisi has extended an invitation to Lesotho Prime Minister Thomas Thabane to pay an official visit to Botswana in August. According to the Deputy Prime Minister Munyane Moleleki, this visit will explore further mutual economic interests between the two countries.
They mean business in 3 main areas. The one area is that of security sector reform. The second is sharing experiences on the minerals side. And finally, the issues of supply of water to Botswana. And the president seems businesslike. He did mention that he was in a hurry. They want to make things happen now, not tomorrow.
A feasibility study is currently underway to see how the 3-nation deal by Lesotho, South Africa and Botswana can best benefit from the Highlands Water Project. Rapelang Khatebe, SABC News, Masego, Lesotho.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump has pledged a stronger support for Nigeria's fight against Boko Haram jihadists while demanding greater trade access to Africa's largest economy. Well, he was speaking following a meeting with Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari, the first leader from the sub-Saharan Africa invited by Trump to the White House. Well, Trump promised to soon sell helicopters to the oil-rich country in addition to a dozen light fighter aircraft to improve Nigeria's ability to fight terrorism and protect civilians. Buhari thanked Trump for support to help rebuild the country's northeast, which has been under assault for 9 years from Boko Haram. In return for America's support, Trump called on Nigeria and other African countries to back the US, Canada, Mexico joint bid to host the Football World Cup in 2026. Well, their meeting was also focused
SABCnews.com is your one-stop digital portal to all the news you need. With a website that is easy to use on mobile, SABC News prides itself in being the primary source of public service content across multiple platforms. Watch live streams of all the big news events on the SABC News YouTube channel, which is one of the most viewed South African YouTube channels globally. And catch up on the best of SABC television and radio news. Follow breaking news on all of the SABC News social media platforms, interact with SABC News on Facebook, and stay connected on Twitter for the latest headlines and real-time updates by our reporters. SABC News, everywhere.
When life takes a different turn.
If I didn't eat the speak, he was going to evict me.
Your will to persevere is ignited.
I'm not a professional speaker, but I'll try my best to give you a word of inspiration.
He was just trying to provide for his family.
If you can't accept it, change it. If you cannot change it, accept it.
And a new story begins.
Made a resolve to myself. I'm learning something new.
Bophelong, every Friday at 5:30. Be part of the life-changing journey.
We give you a front row seat to all the local and international entertainment news on Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
We make sure to be where news is happening,
both locally and globally. For the latest business news, stay with us.
From South Africa to the world, we've got all your latest sporting news.
Don't miss our weather updates every hour. Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday, from 3 to 5:30 p.m. here on SABC News.
There are quite a number of workers who are still not really earning the amount of money that we want them to earn. So workers want a living wage, and the minimum wage is a way of going towards a living wage. Women are still paid far less than men in our country, so today is a day to champion.
Well, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa defends the proposed minimum wage ahead of his maiden International Workers' Day speech.
We believe that there needs to be some introspection amongst people in the governance of the Northwest.
The Deputy Secretary General of the ANC breaks her silence on the issue of the Northwest problem. Operations have resumed at the N3 toll plaza near Moy River in KwaZulu-Natal. Very good morning to you. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm Shantae Yankee. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. A lot coming up this hour. We continue to give you those live updates across the country on nationwide coverage of Workers' Day commemorations as well as rallies. Having a look at our top story, of course, we will be beginning with that live coverage of the May Day rally celebrations. We'll begin this hour with a crossing to Aldrin Sampe, who is with the Minister of Health. Very good morning to you. Aldrin, over to your end.
Well, yes, good morning. We continue with our coverage of the official May Day rally that's taking place here at Isaac Wilferson Stadium in Port Elizabeth. Of course, this is the venue where, as you've indicated, that Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of the country and the president of the ANC, will be delivering his maiden May Day address, which will be happening here in Port Elizabeth. And as you can see in the background, people have started to make their way into the stadium. Members of the different affiliates of Cosatu's unions, as well as ordinary members of the community. But right now joined by Minister of Health, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, here in studio. Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, let me first start off by saying to you, Happy Workers' Day.
Happy Workers' Day and happy
it's quite
to the workers.
It's quite strange that while some people may take Workers' Day as an off day and enjoy Workers' Day as a public holiday, here you have you and I, we are working.
Yeah, well, it's quite unfortunate. It's not supposed to be a public holiday. It's supposed to be the day on which workers of the world reflect, together with all of us, about the history of the working class, because in the final analysis, these are the people who make countries tick, but they are the most oppressed in a way. And so it's very important to have a special day on which we reflect on what they are going through and reflect also on the future.
And when you reflect on the state of the working environment in the health sector, how would you sum it up?
Well, it depends from what position you view it from. For instance, people complain bitterly about shortage of staff. But I've been in the health sector for the past 34 years. So I understand the sector. I can assure you that in the first years of my work in rural areas, there used to be hospitals with no doctor at all, not a single doctor, only the nurses, where very occasionally they see a doctor. And I'm talking here of a clinic, of a hospital, not a clinic. But people don't know that because the news media during that era was almost non-existent to pick up those things. They were happening in the far rural areas, in the homelands. Now there's not a single hospital in South Africa that will ever go without the doctor, even for a single day. But also people don't know that when they complain about shortages, it is because the population is growing very fast, but also because the burden of disease is huge. I just want to stay on that one. The reason that workers feel overworked in South Africa is because the burden of disease is unprecedented. Let me just give you an example. In 2004, we used to have 400,000 people going to our clinics to collect ARVs, 400,000. Today is 4 million people who go to our clinics every month to collect ARVs. It's 10 times what used to be a decade ago. And it's the biggest ever in the world. And do you think we've been able, by whatever means, able to increase the number of clinics tenfold? No. Or the number of nurses 10 times? No. Or the number of doctors 10 times? No, it's not possible. What is increasing is the number of patients. On top of that, you are aware that there's an explosion of what we call non-communicable diseases, diseases of lifestyle. You know, hypertension, diabetes mellitus, cancer, chronic lung disease like asthma. It's actually scary. What people don't know, let me give you this example. On Monday, when I went to Northwest, Monday last week, I went into the depot. The medicine for diabetes have now overtaken medicine for HIV and AIDS. That's unbelievable. And when they showed me on the shelf, I said, how? Why do we have so much diabetic medication? They said, no, this is the biggest one product that we have got in this depot because many more people are suffering diabetes. So when you add the 4 million who are on ARVs and all this with diabetes, hypertension, cancer and all that, our clinics are overflowing and the workers feel completely overworked.
Speaking about the Northwest and speaking about workers feeling that they're overworked, this is of course something that has been raised by Nehao as well. That's why we have this strike that is ongoing in that province. The issue around filling vacancies, how are you dealing with this strike?
Well, it depends. what vacancies they're talking about. And at some stage there was a call from Cosatu that we must fill all the vacancies in all the departments. I went to cabinet that said, if we do that in health, the health sector will collapse. Because when you look at the organogram by provinces, most of the spaces are administrative. That's not what we are looking for. We're looking for the cold face of delivery. You're looking for teachers, for doctors, for nurses, for pharmacists, not the administrative staff. And most of the vacancies is administrative staff. We have actually filled our offices all over the country with administrators rather than the people who do work. That's why I think it's 2 years ago, the then Minister of Finance, Minister Bravin Gordon, said, when he left moratorium on the hiring, he said it does not affect cold face of delivery. It does not affect doctors. It does not affect nurses. It does not affect teachers. And it's written down. Now, I do hear time and again people complaining about the moratorium. It's not from us. It's the provinces doing so. The Minister of Finance announced it with the whole country listening in Parliament during a budget debate. I mean, during when he was presenting his budget, that it does not affect that. So if you talk about filling posts, meaning doctors and nurses, pharmacists, yes, of course, we agree that must happen. But if you mean administrative posts, then we've got a problem with that.
Is there any end in sight, though, for the Northwest strike? And we understand that now, of course, the Northwest Health Department has been placed under administration. Is there any end in sight?
Well,
from your point of view, and you said that you've been in the province quite recently as well.
Well, still, even from my point of view, it doesn't mean anything. The people who started the strike is them who can say there's an end in sight if they are interested in, you know. But I understand they've asked for a meeting with the president. I understand so.
Is there anything that you can do, though?
Of course, I'm doing a lot. I've told you I've already been there on 2 occasions. My DG spent the whole day there. They've met with Nehau. They've met with the staff. You know, on Thursday last week, I called Nehau, the whole national executive from Nehau, and Nehau in Northwest, and the Department of Health. I called them to Pretoria so that we can sit and see exactly what is that we can do to move nearer to each other to end the strike. They said, no, we're not coming to Pretoria. The problem is in Northwest. Let's go to Mahikeng. I obliged. I drove there. When I arrived, because on the road, the Minister of Communication announced the cabinet outcomes that we've put Northwest under Section 100. When I arrived in the meeting at 1 o'clock, they said, Minister, sorry, things have changed now. We came here with a particular mandate. Now there is Section 100, things have changed, we can't have a meeting. We need to go back to our principals and rediscuss the issue. And so I said, no, but you can't just go away. You come from all over the country. Sit with the officials, see the technical things that we can resolve. The political ones, I know you can't. You know, then they said, no, we are also asking for a meeting with the president. I said, that's good, that's brilliant, go on. But sit with the officials headed by the DG to look at some of the smaller things that can be resolved. And we left them doing that. And the DG went there for the whole day again yesterday. And I've already got a team, by the way. I've appointed a team of 7 people who are going to work full-time in Northwest, and they've already started.
And just in terms of this request from the House side, do you know whether the president has agreed to meet with them?
I don't know.
You don't know?
But I don't think he will refuse. There's no reason that he will. He just told me that we are approaching him. Of course, I'm encouraging them. He's the head of government. If they're complaining about his government, they ought to meet him. What I've heard is that it looks like the meeting was arranged, maybe, I think it was on Saturday. But Nehau members were all over the country because of preparation of May Day. It looks like it never took place, but I don't think the president will say, no, I can't meet you, because they were very interested in meeting him. I'll actually encourage the president to meet them.
Here's another one. Nehau now in Gauteng, also going on strike, and as we saw yesterday on the news, the Charlotte Maxeke Hospital being vandalized as well.
That's very disappointing, actually. I saw the pictures because I was not there. And let me start by this. It doesn't matter what your grievance is. It doesn't matter what your grievance with the employer is. You don't go on punishing ordinary members of the public by vandalizing the area where they are vulnerable. I said the same thing in Northwest. When some people, unfortunately we don't know them, went into the Huruse hospital in Zirast, chased the nurses who are taking care of newborn babies. I mean, that's like being a savage, you know. Even animals don't do that to their newborn. Newborns everywhere are taken care of, especially if they are in hospital. When human beings are in hospital, they are vulnerable. It doesn't matter what you can claim the government has done to you as a health worker, but you don't do that to ordinary people. And even the House members, when the little time we met on Thursday, even though they didn't allow the meeting to go on, I mentioned this to them. I said, when you are a health worker, I'm a health worker like myself. I've got, my contract is a triumvirate, you know. I've got a contract with my employer, but I've got a stronger contract with the community, many of whom who don't have any power whatsoever. I've got a contract with them. And that contract, even if it's not written down, I can't just preach it, throw it in the toilet by virtue of thrashing hospitals and chasing nurses out. I can't do that. And I also said, those of us who are doctors, you are not allowed to work until you recite in a special ceremony, the Hippocratic Oath. In fact, among doctors, the graduation ceremony is not important. Maybe now, during my time, the most important event was when you go to recite the Hippocratic Oath. Mm-hmm. In fact, during my time, we're boycotting graduations. Now, that Hippocratic Oath, it says nothing whatsoever about your employer. Nothing. It talks about you and the patient, you and the community. Not a single word is about the employer. So, and I'm not saying employers must go around just oppressing people and not giving them what they want. But I'm saying if you are a health worker, you have got that Hippocratic Oath. And the Nightingale Pledge also says nothing about the employer. It's about you and society. So you can't go and thrash society's things like that. It's wrong. It's wrong, very wrong.
Understandably so, but the grievance right now is with the employer. Is there any intention from your side, from a national level, to intervene in this strike that's taking place in Gauteng?
No, we always intervene. We want to understand. I was speaking to the MEC about the issues. He said they are busy resolving them. We'll always intervene, and I'm not saying people don't have legitimate grievances. I never said so. Please don't misunderstand me. I am saying whatever the grievance is. And I'm repeating, whatever it is that you have with your employer, you can't go and punish ordinary people to an extent where you are prepared to kill them. Because chasing nurses, for instance, who are taking care of the newborn, you are actually murdering those newborn kids because there's nothing they can do. They're just going to die. If we did not rush in to rescue them to another hospital, we will be talking a different story today. So I'm not saying the grievances are not legitimate. Otherwise, we won't be a government if we say so. Most of them are legitimate, but they do not justify the vandalism and the type of savagery that we see happening. What type of human beings have we become? Even during 1976, when the youth were extremely angry in Soweto, I can assure you, when a person appears with a white dress and they recognize it's a nurse, they'll say sorry. They actually protected them. They will allow them to get into taxis and buses, go to work, because they know what it means. What has happened to us? It means there was deeper political consciousness. Now there is savagery. It's not labor consciousness or it's not political consciousness. It's just savagery of me, I want this and I'm going to get it at all costs. It can't be allowed.
Dr. Aaron Mutolere can tell that you're visibly angry by what's happening in the province of Gauteng. As I've indicated earlier on, have you seen on our news coverage as well that the Charlotte Maxeke Hospital being vandalized by members of Nehau who are on strike, but of course Nehau saying that it's none of its members who are on strike, but others who have witnessed this have a different story to tell. Right now, let's go back to the pitch where we have Unati Pingosi standing by with some of the members of the different affiliates of Cosatu who are here to celebrate May Day.
A very good morning to you, SABC News viewers, as we welcome you back to this rolling coverage of the International Workers' Day, celebrated here by Cosatu at Wolfson Stadium. And I can tell you that things are beginning to take shape, and the stadium is filling up quite rapidly. You'd remember that the ANC President, Cyril Ramaphosa, during the January 8th statement, he made it clear that they will be out on a mission to ask for a love back from their supporters. And I can tell you that not everyone who is here is a worker. We also have some strong ANC supporters who have taken time to be part of this rally. Ma'am, a very good morning to you. Tell me, why have you decided to drop everything and be part of this event?
Into eyenzekayo njengoba silapha nje sizosupporta upresident wethu uRamaphosa apha kungasekhaya iwadi yami lena, but into esicelayo kupresident kunye nabalandeli bakhe abafana nathi nabantu abaphetheyo kwa-ANC, xana kuzabakho izinto ezifana nezi eziwadini zethu, abantu bokuqala baprioritize ngabantu bewadi. For instance, ngoku njengoba ndime apha nje i-catering ezakwenzeka apha thina asiyazi uba kuzawutyisa oobani baphi na kwephi indawo, sibe thina sizi-SMMEs zewadi. So xa benosinceda kuloo nto leyo ngabe kanti kusenzela okuhle simlandele ngenene nangenyaniso.
Understand bangaba ninomdla futhi nakwakhiwa kwamathuba engqesho, creation of job creation. Tell us about that.
Okay, mna into ebendizayicela kupresident ndiqala akhuphe imisebenzi khona abantu abatsha, siyeke usebenza for iproject, sisebenzele iproject for 3 years singaqeshwa sibe permanent. Sifuna imisebenzi epermanent ngoku sonele siproject.
Ma'am, okay, wamention umcimbi wethu.
Ndithi mna ingxaki yami esinayo apha singabahlali zii-rates ezidurayo zalapha kunye nombane othengwayo apha uyadura apha eBhayi. And inzima into yethu because kaloku asiphangeli kodwa kufuneka sibhatale imali ezininzi ezinkulu ezingaka. Ndiyabulela.
Bulela thina meme nkosi kakhulu masenikhulule siyabulela kakhulu ngexesha leni. Thank you very much. Those were some of the people who have decided to come and attend this event. And the love back that the president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, has spoken about during the January 8th rally is beginning to show. I mean, you can tell even by the numbers of people that are beginning to stream into this venue that affection is beginning to show. With that, allow us to hand back to studio. We'll keep you posted on what will be happening down here as we wait for the president and his entourage to arrive at the venue and deliver the message of support from the ANC. And then it will be the turn of the Cosatu president, Mr. Stumo Dlamini, to deliver the message of the day. With that, it's back to you in Auckland Park.
Very much for that, Unati Bikose for SABC News in Port Elizabeth. And that's how many people have been celebrating their morning today. How will you be celebrating International Workers' Day? That is the question that we've asked you this morning on at SABC Newsroom this morning. Now let's have a look at some of the tweets coming through on social media as you have shared what you'll be doing today. Tabo says, I will be staying at home and the whole day. Barry Martin says, I'll be celebrating International Workers' Day with a braai and relaxing at home because tomorrow it's back to work again. Official DMAX says, I'll be sleeping on my couch while watching TV. And Marta Calvin says, hi team, today I will just do a couple of light jobs because I can't celebrate Workers' Day by working hard. Indeed, Calvin, you and I both, we've also been asking on our poll question today, very, very important, can South Africa afford that proposed minimum wage? We do expect this to be centre of highlight during President Cyril Ramaphosa's speech today. Just over 1,260 votes coming through. 75% of participants are saying yes. The other 25% of you are saying no. Let's have a look at some of the commentary behind those numbers through tweets. Well, Cash says, well, if employers can afford the profit cuts and exorbitant salaries of their senior staff, then yes. You can't say ShopRite cannot afford it whilst its CEO is earning millions a month and a cashier is getting less than 3,000 Rand. So yes, we can without hurting consumers more. Otabo says South Africa is a rich country in Africa, so that minimum wage is nothing. The Great on Twitter says, to be realistic, the ANC in Cosatu, there is no one that can actually live on a wage of 20 Rand per hour. Tinkla or Bongani Ngobo says no, but we thank the leadership for this. We never had it in the past. He says yes, only if they can cut down the security expenses they spend on ministers. I mean, 15 black cars with 25 guards accompanying one minister. Even the president doesn't need it. It's a waste of resources. Yeah, definitely very interesting views, and all comments definitely leaning on that 75%, saying that South Africa can definitely afford it. You know, you are a political analyst, but economically, can we afford it?
Well, you see, the problem tends to be on which perspective we're asking the question. Are we saying that as a country at large, should there be a minimum wage that everybody sort of complies with? Well, of course, the answer is that is a responsible thing to do. But remember, what tends to happen is that this is going to be a conversation between you and your employer. So the employer needs to be able to then say, well, actually, I can afford to implement the minimum wage for my entire workforce. And if the employer says, I cannot afford to implement it for everyone across the board, then that employer has to then take the decision of saying, perhaps I'm going to lay off some workers so that I can spread the resources that I have in order to ensure that the people that do remain on the payroll are able to access the minimum wage. So it's a very difficult one to sort of analyze on an abstract level, because there's going to be obviously conversations between the employers and the employees on the basis of what is available in terms of resources that the employer has to sort of deploy to his employees. So in some cases, there will be the painful conversations of employers simply saying, unfortunately, I cannot afford it at that rate, so this is my course of action, and some people might end up being cut out of the job market. And you'll see that that's probably what the DA's view has been on the matter, because they are of the opinion that if you force people to subscribe to some minimum wage, it means that some employers are simply going to lay off people. But of course, this should be part of a bigger conversation, which is to say, in cases where employers can validly say that actually we simply cannot afford to implement this wage, what are the possible avenues that can be explored? Because in most cases, you want everybody to sort of have access to something that they can live by. And of course, even 3,500 is not something that a lot of people can be able to afford to live by. But there's also the possibility that some people won't even be able to access it simply because the employers are going to opt out of it. So what type of protection can you advance to those people? It should be something we focus on for the next year.
What about the issue of subsidization? You know, a lot of people have been saying, yes, government can afford it. We saw that one tweet there saying, you know, spending on 15 cars and 25 security personnel for one minister. Could those resources not then be, you know, put into some sort of a fund or a way going forward where that would then subsidize, you know, what government would give, and then, you know, employees would then, you know, do another percentage on top of that?
So the problem with the very idea of subsidizing people that are already in the workplace is that you have to consider that there's millions of people who aren't even in possession of a job to begin with. So then the question would be, on what basis are we taking public resources and allocating them to alleviating the burden of people who already have some foothold on the economy, when there are so many people who don't have it at all? So I don't think you could ever sell something like that politically. But of course, there's always the passive subsidies. So perhaps the government could then say, look, let us sort of put more money into public resources, into public infrastructure, so that we insulate, you know, workers from the effect of the inflationary increase in just the transport costs. So obviously that's one way in which the government can assist people. But to expect a direct subsidy that simply says that if an employer pays so much, this is how we're going to top it up, would be very difficult to sell, especially in this particular climate. But there are things that the government can do, because in some cases, of course, there's ways of using perhaps tax instruments to sort of create an incentive for people to be able to say, okay, fine, if this is the concession that we're getting from the state, then perhaps we can afford to implement this minimum wage. So it should be part of a bigger conversation. But of course, that's what NEDLAC exists to do, because that's where the bargaining and, you know, the to and the fro is supposed to be happening, for people to say, fine, we will go so far if you are able to sort of meet us halfway through. So that's what the NEDLAC platform is primarily built for.
But, you know, let's have a look at some of the grassroots levels that actually affect employment and workers. You know, it's all fair and well to say, you know, the lack of employment opportunities. Yes, there are many graduates who are qualified and skilled and still don't have jobs, but there are also, you know, a significant force of people that do not necessarily have the skills. But then are then saying, you know, we want access to those opportunities. So in terms of, you know, on an education point, the push that we've now seen from, some of the ministers in the education department on TVET colleges and going to, some sort of these skills development workshops and programs?
Look, I mean, employment in South Africa is not a homogeneous space, so obviously there will be people that will say validly that actually people who have got university degrees have got a much higher prospect of securing jobs in this particular economy, but also there's the question of, are we producing the right skills for the economy that we're dealing with? And you also, as you said earlier on, there's been this push over the past 10 to 15 years to say perhaps TVET colleges should form a bigger part of the solutions mix, which is to say, what is it that people can do and study in these particular colleges that gives them access to the workplace? And I think that we probably haven't found the right balance yet. There is still far too many students that want to go to university primarily rather than going to our colleges, simply because of the historic stigmas associated with the colleges. So we should be talking about how do we change the perspective so that people see them as an alternative place where you can actually gain skills that you can use to sort of advance yourself. And I think at this stage we probably haven't found that right mix there. So far too many students are thinking universities are the only solution, but clearly that is not the case. Definitely.
Continuing with our live coverage of the May Day rally, specifically in Port Elizabeth, as we await President Cyril Ramaphosa's address. Let's cross over to SABC's Aldrin Sampe is in studio with Oscar Mabuyane as well as Senzo Mchunu. Over to you, Aldrin.
Well, we continue with our coverage of the official May Day rally that's taking place here in Port Elizabeth at the Isaac Wolferson Stadium. And any moment from now, we will see the president of the ANC and president of the country making his way to the podium where he will deliver his maiden May Day speech. But right now, let me just quickly introduce my guests. We start off with Oscar Mabuyane, the chairperson of the ANC in the province. Oscar, I think that you guys are starting to monopolize the president. We were here for January 8th statement, and now we are here for the May Day rally.
Not really. Quite happy. This is a national program. Is here now because there's a national program of Cosatu. As you understand that in the ANC, in our revolution, the National Democratic Revolution, we are saying the working class is the primary motive force. We must do everything to ensure that we support the workers. We must make it a point that we unite workers. Divided workers are also not going to help us to move forward and advance the National Democratic Revolution. So the president is here now because there's a national program of Cosatu. We're happy as a province, of course, to host the president because we've got a lot of challenges here. Having him more from that level, looking at things and challenges that we are going through as a province, helps us to also simplify things as we talk to the national leadership about challenges that are facing our province. Whether you talk about socio-economic challenges, the development of our people in general, it's of interest that we have national leadership more often visiting us so that they understand all other things that we are trying to do to make it a point that the alliance is united, the ANC is able to lead the alliance properly.
And someone who is from that national leadership is Senzo Mchunu, who is also an ANC NEC member. Let's just quickly speak about the importance of the unity of the alliance and the role that Cosatu must be playing in the alliance.
Of course, for years now, if not decades, we have declared our love in South Africa in the revolution itself. Before 1994 and even now, our love for an alliance between the ANC, Cosatu, and the SACP, of course led by the African National Congress. And we talk about this right from the 1920s, when in the trenches, in the struggle for liberation in this country, we found one another, and we shared the common dream of a free and liberated South Africa. And we found ourselves shooting in the same direction. We found ourselves sharing the same grievances and the same dream. And here we are, post-1994. That dream has been realized after lots and lots of sacrifices from the African National Congress, from the SACP, from Cosatu, from our communities in their individual capacity and community organizations. We're now here and saying, let us continue with that unity that brought us to where we are, and make sure that we sacrifice none of our gains, but instead consolidate them, so that the fruits of liberation reach out to everyone, up to the last member of the community. But of course, we also realize the need of working together, not just be united for the sake of being united, but continue to share the same dreams and same hopes. Of course, we come from separate perspective now that we have government. The ANC is in government, but of course it's an ANC government that has come at the level of governance with the struggles of Cosatu and the SACP. But Cosatu remains the leader of the workers in South Africa. And we're saying as they continue to express the views of the workers, government must be very close to listen to those. Government must be very close to respond to those. Government must be very close to take the dreams of our workers forward, as promised long time ago when we came together in the trenches for liberation.
A chairperson of the Eastern Cape, Oscar Mabuyane, tell me about the moment that Cosatu had decided to expel NUMSA. Of course, NUMSA having a strong constituency in this province. Would you say that that has had a political impact on the strength of the ANC and the alliance here in the province?
Definitely yes, without a doubt. Well, we respect our alliance and in the independence of our allies, but you understand that the ANC is bigger than that. The ANC, as a leader of the society, has got bigger interests that are boundless beyond the ideological parameters. Our interest was that any divided federation or any arrangement or divided workers, that is not good for our revolution. As Comrade Senzo has indicated, that revolution that binds us, that makes us to share that common goal of a prosperous country. So the more you have that kind of a situation of workers going opposite direction, but they've got common interest, it's a challenge to us as the African National Congress. Definitely NUMSA, you understand, particularly the area where we are, is a highly industrialized area in the Eastern Cape. Probably there's many things have happened. There's more, you had a lot of leaders of workers who actually led the ANC, who started many things here from Nelson Mandela. That's why we say Nelson Mandela is also a home of the African National Congress. A lot of leaders of workers who sacrificed their lives for the ANC, for the advancement of the National Democratic Revolution. They actually, that split, that break of NUMSA is not good. It will not be good. I think it's something that as the African National Congress, we must actually try to engage our ally as Cosatu to really see through that bigger mirror, because it's important. It's important that we are able to come around and unite our people. We talk about a united, non-sexist, non-racial, democratic and prosperous country. That unity is indeed a rock upon the ANC was formed. So whatever that we do, we must strive for that. We must go an extra mile. There will, of course, be a lot of irritation. Comrade Senzo speaks about post-1994 dispensation of the African National Congress, which now assumes the character of being a political party that is leading government. Definitely, we have got an issue of employee-employer kind of labor relations dynamics. Unlike with the African National Congress, pre-1994, a liberation movement in the alliance with Cosatu and South African Communist Party as well as SANCO. But we continue with that. It shows how deep that relationship is. It shows that kind of aims of objectives of the African National Congress. As you understand that South African Communist Party and of course the vanguard of the working class is actually of the view that that national democratic society is a very closer step to the socialism. So they are with us not because we look good, not because we probably happened to be together as an accident of history, but because our ultimate goal are actually those that are making us to be able to be common as alliance.
Do you think at all that there's space for Cosatu to probably try and woo NUMSA back into its fold?
I think we must get it to a point where we really put issues of pride and all the other irritation. The revolution is something, it's not an event, it's a process, it takes long. You must develop that element of patience at a particular point. Cosatu leadership must understand that it leads, it's a federation that has assumed the character of leading workers in South Africa. So we can't celebrate that split. It's a painful thing. We think that Cosatu must really relook at that and begin to think broader than actually it has been considering the issue. Those workers, most of them who are in NUMSA, Safta, are ANC members, are behind African National Congress, are actually voting for the ANC. So they are found in a situation where they must just experience an unnecessary ambivalence because of these the political dynamics that are taking place between Safta probably of late as well as Cosatu. But as the African National Congress, we want workers to be united. We want workers to be consolidated. We are in the alliance with Cosatu, of course. We would want workers to be united behind Cosatu so that we continue to advancing our national democratic revolution.
Senzom Kunu, let me bring you in here because the issue around NUMSA, it also brings about the debate around a Labour Party, and they've tried to contest the elections here in Nelson Mandela Bay, for instance. Is this a concern for the ANC at all?
Of course, it is a concern. You know, our ideal situation in the country as far as workers are concerned, we would really love to have one federation. There is one federation pulling all the aspirations of workers in South Africa, those in the public sector, those in the private sector, those in big business, those in small businesses, forging their aspirations and their efforts together in terms of what they hope for, in terms of the labor dispensation in the country. And government will understand better and easier if workers speak in one voice and if they pull to one direction. I'm not saying that government is not listening from where I sit, but I'm saying they have to listen to Cosatu, they have to listen to Safta, they have to listen to any other federation that we have, instead of sitting in one table and understanding the whole labor dispensation in the country from one perspective, and then responding at a goal in trying to resolve those matters. So the ideal situation, so as the African National Congress, as Oscar was saying, we will never turn our back to Safta. We will always engage Cosatu. We will always persuade them to say, don't be far, because the grazing land is the same. So don't be far, don't turn your back either from any federation, especially Safta. The leadership of Safta comes from the same federation, they come from the same trade unions. So where is the difference? It may be here, it may be there in terms of emphasis on this policy and that policy, or it may be bigger than that, but let us work together. That is the ideal situation.
Do you think, though, the ANC, by being, of course, the leader of the alliance, has inadvertently stripped Cosatu of its power? Because if you look at the Polokwane conference, a decision was taken that labor brokering will be scrapped. That has not happened, and Cosatu continues to protest against that. And I'm sure today as well, Stumwa Dlamini, the president of Cosatu, will mention this issue. And another thing, in this same province where the ANC launched its manifesto, the ANC said that we encourage municipalities to discourage the use of outsourcing labor. Instead what they should be doing is insourcing labor. But you don't see that really trickling down to the workers, those who are employed at a grassroots level.
Well, there's a historical tension between efforts at efficiency in terms of government and effectiveness of your implementation of the policies that have been agreed on one hand, and the need for jobs or to protect jobs. There will always be tension. But countries that have made progress as far as this is concerned is to accept the challenge. That's number one. But also then, having accepted the challenge, to find ways of accommodating both. You make sure, on one hand, that government is efficient in terms of executing its task as government, so that the country makes progress, and makes progress with low or cost-effective measures. But at the same time, there's no government that can exist when it sheds jobs on a daily basis, both in the public and the private sector. But making an effort in terms of effectiveness of your policies and efficiencies at government level, so that you compete even at international level for international resources. There is no that is not necessarily exclusive of ensuring that jobs are created. What you need to do is to understand what you need to do once you've set up goals and how you'll get there, and create jobs along the way. You see, the introduction of technology is not necessarily spelling doom to jobs. It depends on how far we're able to think efficiently in terms of ensuring that whatever technology that necessarily gets introduced at any level of work, it does not necessarily shed all jobs and then make people jobless, and therefore you increase. Because as government, I will tell you, as the ruling party, you can't derive any joy that you have introduced technology and things seem to be working well, but on the other hand, people are not working. They are not finding, young people are not finding any job. And so it's a question of firing it's a question of introducing or developing a system in the country that fires with all the cylinders. Job creation, efficiency, training of young people who come in to grab jobs in an industrialized and a country that is acceptive to the fourth revolution, that is technology.
Just quickly, Oscar Mabuya, and before I let both of you go, this is very important, right? The implementation of policies that have been set by government, and of course the tripartite alliance, which includes Cosatu, would have been sitting at a summit and discussing some of these issues that will be at the manifesto launch, and ensuring that these things are actually implemented. Because once you go and do your door-to-door campaign, people say to you, but Oscar, this is what you promised and you haven't delivered on this.
Definitely, you know, the ANC must simply rise to the occasion. ANC has actually earned a particular responsibility of being the leader of this alliance. You don't need workers or Cosatu in our alliance to remind us about our aims and objectives. ANC aims and objectives actually affirms ANC as a disciplined force of the left. We must walk the talk. We must behave as such. It will be good for the ANC not to have sweetheart trade unions, particularly in the public sector, because we're a governing party. If we do that, we are basically authorizing our demise. We are actually doing it to the detriment of our revolution. Because for the ANC as a governing party to remain on its toes, it needs very vibrant, progressive unions that are also having that shared common destination with the African National Congress. So ANC must simply live up to its aims and objectives and begin to continue to affirm all those progressive forces that we're working with, that we're in the alliance with, in government. We should not really be having what we are experiencing now from an ANC point of view, as a chairperson of the ANC, where you can't have a government of the ANC easily finding a solution with the public sector unions to a point that we are actually reaching a point that we have actually reached now. It's not very good for these workers, not only those who are in the public sector, but the posture. What we say, we must actually, what do you call it, walk the talk, as I've indicated. It's important for the ANC to be able to do that. As you say, we work together with Alliance, we prepare the manifestos, etc. We package the mandate to a particular administration. It just can't be about ANC when you have won the elections and have Cosatu and SACP moving around, complaining about this and that. Not that we are co-governing, but ANC must actually continue to aspire, to inspire before it expires.
Well, thank you so much. There you have it from Oscar Mabuya, the chairperson of the ANC here in the Eastern Cape. Of course, they are the host province of today's May Day rally that's taking place here in Port Elizabeth. The official May Day rally taking place here, where we expect the president of the country and the president of the ANC to deliver his maiden May Day speech, as well as Senzo Mchunu, an ANC NEC member. A lot of issues indeed that they've raised there. And quite importantly, an issue around implementing these resolutions that have been set out by the ANC. And there's some analysts have argued that if you look at the Cosatu and Cosatu's strength at the moment, that it would somehow seem that it is a quote-unquote a lapdog. Whether that is true or not is something else. If you look, for instance, at the different protests and marches and campaigns that Cosatu has had over the years, one of those issues which we spoke about early on is, of course, the issue around labor brokering. It's a battle that still continues, and Stumo Dlamini would probably still mention that today. The issue around e-tolls. E-tolls still stand in Gauteng, and that's a continuous battle that Cosatu has been fighting. And now, of course, the issue that Cosatu is facing is some of its affiliates. Some of its affiliates who want to pull out of the federation, now with the organization of this new federation called Safta. It's back to you guys in studio.
All right, thank you very much for that. Aljan Samper just taking us through what's happening that end, the May Day rally celebrations in Port Elizabeth. Well, the Labour Federation National Council of Trade Unions, Nactu, which has a membership of more than 400,000, is also celebrating Workers' Day at the Sharpeville Sports Grounds. Nactu is a merger of the Council of Unions of South Africa and the Azanian Confederations of Trade Unions. It is also currently an affiliate of the International Trade Union Confederation. SABC's Gloria's Sefaka Musi spoke to the Deputy General Secretary of Nactu, Eddie Tobadane.
We're coming to you from Sharpeville Sports Ground in Vereeniging, where Nactu is celebrating Workers' Day under the theme Building an Inclusive Economy and Fighting Corruption. Among the topics that the speakers will be addressing is fighting to stop retrenchments and also fighting to stop the increasing cost of living from the electricity costs and transport costs. Well, they're also calling for land to be given to workers for them to be able to build decent homes for themselves and also to be able to grow food. Well, let's talk a bit about Nactu. Nactu is a federation of about a membership of about close to 400,000 workers, with the biggest affiliate being AMCU in the mining and construction workers. Well, to talk more about today's event, we are joined now by Eddie Tobadane, who is the Deputy General Secretary of Nactu. Thank you so much, Mr. Tobadane, for joining us. Talking about your affiliate, AMCU, they've just sent a message earlier saying that calling for their workers to not join in the celebration, but to rather go to work if they so wish, saying the day should be moved to August the 16th to also commemorate the day that the workers at Marikana were killed. What is Nactu's response to this?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you very much to your listeners. With regard to AMCU's statement is that as Nactu, we feel very strong that no, this day is a very important day for the workers. We've been fighting for this day before 1994. And after 1994, this very important day it was accepted by the ruling party who's currently in government, and all unions and federation, business and community in this country, they have supported this day to be a workers' day. On the day of AMCO, I cannot speak on their behalf, but I can only speak about this important day that it has been affecting the workers before 1994. Hence, we are here as Nactu to come and celebrate this important day that we've been denying this right to celebrate this day on the 1st of May before 1994.
One of the issues that you're going to be talking about here is the issue of the national minimum wage. What is Nactu stands on this?
Look, I think Nactu stands about the national minimum wage. And Nactu was part of the discussions of the dialogue at NETLEC, where Nactu's party and other federation, community, business and government, we support national minimum wage, because the national minimum wage is going to at least uplift more than 4 million workers to where they're standing to somewhere else. I'll give you one example. Let me say I'm a farm worker. I'm taking home 1,200. I'm working with my wife here, for example, and then every month we are taking 2.4 at home. So after implementation of national minimum wage, we'll be taking 7,000 at home. And this confirms that at least we have changed life of the poor out there. And I believe that they all support this national minimum wage.
That's a wrap-up of SABC Newsroom this morning, just in conversation with the political analyst Cosatu as we're wrapping up, talking about some of the other issues that were brought up, in fact, e-tolls, and with regards to some of the effects of that. Thank you very much for joining us for the entire SABC Newsroom analysis on the post-May Day rally celebrations and commemorations that have been taking place. Until tomorrow, bye-bye.